Good evening, and welcome to the Council Advisory Committee CAC meeting of the 11th of September, 2023. This meeting is being live streamed on the Town of Kentville YouTube channel. The most up-to-date meeting package is on the Town of Kentville website. And our public service announcement for this evening is with regards to the resident survey, which is currently available on social media and the kentville.ca website. The survey closes on September 30th, and there are prizes. The first $100 gift card was given away last week, so complete your survey for a chance to win a $100 gift card. This meeting is called to order. Have all of the councillors received and reviewed their meeting package? Does any member of council have information pertaining to a matter before this council which has not been publicly circulated? As a Council Advisory Committee, CAC, we will vote as committee to either send business forward to the council meeting for ratification, return to staff for further information or review, or defeat the recommendation. The council will be voting electronically on all motions except administrative, which will be by show of hands. Are there any conflict of interest issues we should be aware of before the meeting commences? And I note that we do have quorum. We have been provided with a proposed agenda. CAO, are there any further additions or deletions to this agenda?
Thank you, Mayor Snow. I have two items I would propose, and these are under item 10 in camera. So I would propose we add item B, which would be personnel.
Thank you.
And item C, which would be land.
All right, thank you. If we could have a motion to adopt the agenda as amended, please. Councillor Huntley, thank you. Deputy Mayor, thank you. All those in favor? Those opposed? The motion is carried. Thank you. You have been provided with the Council Advisory Committee meeting, July 10th minutes, and they have been distributed for your review and approval. If there are no changes, the minutes are approved as distributed. If there are changes, the recording secretary will annotate those minutes in red. Are there any changes? No changes? Thank you very much. All right, we have one presentation this evening, and it is from the Evangeline Club. And we have board member Sherry here to make the presentation. Sherry, the podium is yours, and if you could please adjust the mic so that you're speaking into it. And if you can project your voice, because the folks behind you don't always get as good as what we get out front here.
Okay.
Please stand by. I'll figure this out. I can't do it when they're sitting on the screen.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to visit with you guys tonight. And just a quick question before I get into talking. How many of you have heard of the Evangeline Club? Okay, almost all of you. Right. Does it show up there?
It won't show here
It'll show
because
there.
of the setup tonight, unfortunately. So that should just. Okay.
Just a test here.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's our Evangeline Club. We're 30 years in the making. We spent, before I get into it, my apologies. I'd like to introduce our board chair, Carolyn Campbell. She's here. We have a new board, not quite a year yet. And Carolyn is here for moral support. This is my first time presenting to council, so thank you, Carolyn. The Evangeline Club has been an entity of its own for 30 years. It spent some time at the Kentville Hospital, then into New Minas, and now it's in Berwick since 2015 on Commercial Street. We provide services to individuals who primarily our folks are people that live with mental health issues, including addictions. We have several folks who are unhoused. Right now, about 30% of our membership is without housing right now. And a good many of those folks come into our club during the day and spend all day there. Our primary purpose really is to provide a place to belong for any of you who might have experience either individually or with family members. Living with mental illness can be ostracizing. There's an incredible amount of stigma, and isolation is a very common practice for people with mental illness who aren't feeling well because there's still a lot of judgment for those of us living with mental illness. And I have a passion about this because I live with a mental illness. In fact, all of the people who work at the Evangeline Club on payroll live with some degree of a mental health challenge. So belonging becomes a very important piece in maintaining mental health and in the recovery of mental health issues. And that's really what we're trying to provide for folks, along with a host of other things. But the primary thing is that people walk into the club and they feel welcome. I've only been with the club since April, and at that time when I started, we were serving, there's a free meal every day at lunch. We have volunteers who take care of the kitchen, so we have, oh, very sorry. Thank my ADHD brain. Anyway, we have several volunteers who spend time in the kitchen and prepare healthy meals. It's a big part of what we offer to the folks, because so many of the folks we provide service to are unhoused or low income and not able to buy healthy foods on their own. We also have a community garden. We spent a lot of time this summer that garden was actually built by a former member. His name was Herb, and he created this beautiful spiral garden that we're continuing to work now. And unfortunately, Herb succumbed to his illness and took his life. So this has kind of become a memorial garden to Herb. We do social and recreational programming. We try to offer one program a day. So we have folks come in offering music lessons, art. We're going to do some line dancing next week. We do bingo. We've gone out on community events. It's something that the members really look forward to, and it's a nice way to take your mind off of any of the struggles that you're having if you're in an active state of illness. Our other supports include peer support. As I mentioned, every staff person at the Evangeline Club lives with mental health challenges, and we offer support to those members who may be struggling. We have laundry facilities on site. They're actually taken advantage of by a good many of the members, not just our unhoused folks. We also have shower facilities. We have internet and computer access. And because a good portion of our membership is currently unhoused, and because we aren't open on weekends, we do provide weekend food boxes for folks so that they don't go hungry over the weekend. We are also the administrators of the Elaine Arsenault Fund. This might be of particular interest to you folks because anyone in the Annapolis Valley area is eligible to apply for this source of funding. There are a couple of criteria. They must be living independently in the community and not have other access to funding. And they need a letter of reference from their mental health support people, one of those. That becomes a little bit more difficult as face-to-face mental health services are declining. but for those with doctors, it's a bit easier, but it is part of the criteria. I included some stats that I thought you might find interesting. On average, we're serving about 100 meals a week. The average number of unique visitors per week is 15. We do have some members who come Monday to Friday and stay all day. Typically, they are our unhoused folks. Then we have other folks who come in on a particular day. Some just come on Wednesday, some come a couple of days a week. On average, we've got about 10 folks in the club on a daily basis. Well, 10 members. We can have more than 10 because we often have visitors and volunteers, that type of thing. And a little bit of information about our member demographics. You might find it interesting that 25% of our membership is actually from Kentville. There are resources here in Kentville, but like many places, at capacity. And depending on the individual, I know that the service that folks access here is sometimes a little bit too busy and hectic for them. So they come to the club because it's a little bit quieter. The most important thing that I want to bring up today is issues around funding. And I'm really well aware that you folks really aren't the people that make the decisions about who gets funding in our community and who doesn't. But you can be advocates for us. There are an increasing number of gaps being left by the lack or a decrease in funding to social programs in our communities. And that has implications for the folks that we serve. You know, when those services go away, and I mentioned very briefly that mental health services, since COVID, it's next to impossible to get a face-to-face appointment with a mental health professional. You can go online, which is, you know, where these folks are being directed now, or you can call an emergency helpline. But in discussion with members, none of those options are measuring up. So vulnerable populations, including low-income individuals and families, the homeless, and those with mental health issues face increased vulnerability. They're struggling to access the essential needs like healthcare, housing, nutrition, and mental health support. We've talked a bit about homelessness, and I suspect you folks might know a bit more than the average person about the increasing numbers of homeless people in our communities. And I don't think it's a surprise to say that I think that that number will continue to increase. We're just not, most folks aren't able to afford the rents that are being charged right now. People without shelter or supportive services would suffer from exposure to the elements and lack of basic necessities. Increased crime. I did a little bit of research, and I have noted that crime in the Annapolis Valley, pretty much since COVID, and when all of the changes to people's incomes and that kind of thing, crime is increasing. And I do believe that that's a result of the lack of supports from government for a lot of programs and the fact that the economy is just overall not really all that good. When government cuts funding, emergency services, including hospitals and law enforcement, become strained as they deal with the fallout from increased healthcare needs and public safety concerns. And for us, nonprofits, It has huge consequences for us. The number of people that we serve increases. Their needs become more complicated. The current funding model requires us to compete against other nonprofits. Once upon a time, I'm not sure if you remember, but the government used to give us funding for a year or two at a time. So we could put our heads down and we could go to work, and we didn't have to worry about trying to apply for funding every 6 months. You know, trying to figure out, are we going to be around in 6 months? Because we don't know if we've got the funding. Nonprofit organizations, in the absence of government funding and government services, are community's last line of defense. So I'm here today to ask that you folks who have an opportunity to advocate on our behalf can do so with those folks in positions of power and authority with regard to funding. We want to be able to long-term plan. We want to be able to meet the needs of the individuals that come in to, and not just our nonprofit, all nonprofits. When I speak about this, I'm not looking for anything specifically for the Evangeline Club. I'm really trying to raise the awareness of what nonprofits are facing right now. So how can the Evangeline Club help council? We can be a resource for council. We have relationships with other nonprofits and other supports in the Annapolis Valley. If you aren't sure how to help a constituent, you can call us. And if we don't have the proper resource and name for you to reach out to, we'll find it. We have the Elaine Arsenault Fund, which all of your constituents would be eligible for, providing they follow the criteria. And I believe that's $500? Yep. We support unhoused constituents. And essentially that means you folks don't need to worry so much about unhoused people on your streets, because there are nonprofits in your communities who are helping. And we also fill in the gap with mental health supports. I think I'm a bit concerned, as someone who lives with a mental health illness, that we're going to see a crisis. I don't know how long it will take, but I do believe that the lack of face-to-face resources for individuals living with mental health illnesses, it will not have good consequences. Often folks who aren't able to cope turn to drugs. Drugs can turn to addiction. So, how can council help nonprofits? And as I mentioned before, short-term competitive grant funding is inadequate. Government at all levels must recognize the need for long-term funding, for a long-term funding model, and increase funding to address the increased need. I don't think you could invite too many nonprofits in here today. There might be one or two that would say, yes, we have enough funding. The rest would say, no, we don't, and we don't have enough staff, or whatever else the need is. I think it's important that folks recognize the work that nonprofits are doing in the absence of our government, and we need your support. As a mechanism to deal with the challenges that we face as nonprofits and to see where we can support each other, we're organizing an event on the 28th of September. We've invited all nonprofits to the club, and our intention is to see how we can support each other. For example, the Evangeline Club has a huge space and a kitchen. We're open from 9:30 to 2:30, so for the rest of the day, the space is available. We also have an office downstairs where there's the potential for another organization to take advantage of. What we don't have is a vehicle, for example, but that nonprofit has a vehicle. So we're gonna explore how we can work together in the face of funding challenges. And I invite all of you to drop by if you want to. It would be a great opportunity to meet the nonprofits around the Annapolis Valley. And even though I'm not in your town, I think the stats show that while we're dealing with certain issues, people will travel to get the support that they need. So Kentville residents are coming to the club. One more thing. So if anybody wants to volunteer or be a board member or spread the word, if you could do that, I'd really appreciate it. We've got a great board. We've got a great direction. We just need a couple more. And volunteers, I don't know, volunteers are getting harder and harder and harder to get now. I don't know how close I am to my 10 minutes, but thank you. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Don't run away. We might have questions.
Okay.
Or there may be somebody ready to volunteer to be a board member.
Oh.
All right, are there any questions for Sherry? Counselor Huntley.
Hi, Sherry. You did a good job with the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have a couple questions.
Sure.
One is, for the staffing that's there, is it split 50-50 between paid staff and volunteers right now?
There are actually more volunteers than paid staff.
Okay. And if you had to have a guesstimation of what does it take to run the Evangeline Club for 1 year financially?
Oh, goodness.
I can help, Sherry.
Okay. I'm too new to answer that question.
Yeah.
That's okay.
It depends on whether or not you want the basics or the ideal, okay? The basics, 150,000, I'd say. Ideal, which would mean paying our staff a salary with dignity, and having more services and more things available. I think the ideal would be around 220,000.
Okay, thank you.
And I should mention that we do get some funding from Department of Community Services and Department of Health. Interesting though, Sherry pointed out that I just started on the board in November, but I was the first board the chair of the first board 33 years ago when Evangeline started. The amount that we're getting from Community Services is the same amount that we negotiated when I started 33 years ago. A few costs have gone up since then.
Yeah.
And what we're getting from the Department of Health is the same amount that they got in 2010, so.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Last question. The food boxes that you give out on the weekends, is that food donated to you, or does that have to come out of your cost?
It comes out of our cost.
Okay,
We do
Thank you.
get some donations, but the
Oh.
majority is, yeah.
okay.
Yeah, and we do get, like, we've gotten grant funding, which is what Sherry's referring to. The grant funding doesn't pay for the heat pump, though, right? It's the long-term operational funding. We're really grateful for the grant funding. We've got a food program, we've got a wellness program that was funded through Mental Health Foundation. We've got another application into them. The time it takes to do those.
Yep.
And it doesn't cover the lights or the heat or the.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So if you folks can, when you have the opportunity to see any provincial or federal folks, if you can put a little plug in for the nonprofits that want to continue doing what they're doing but can't because we're just underfunded.
Counselor York.
Thank you. First, I'm sorry for the loss of your friend Herb. That's devastating. Secondly, if somebody wanted to make a donation, where's the best place to do it and how quickly, or where would you prefer the money go? How do we get it to you?
So it depends on if this is.
Oh, brilliant.
Go through the website, right?
Yes. No.
Yeah, no?
No.
Okay,
Canada Helps is there.
okay, all right, you answered.
So right now, we After 33 years, we have a website now,
Yes.
but that function isn't
Okay.
available yet, the donate button. So
Okay.
you can go to Canada Helps,
Okay.
and they have,
And it links through from there to you.
yep,
Brilliant.
or you can write a check and you'll get a tax receipt.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Oh, I'm there.
What?
Sorry. No. So we're connecting someone on Zoom,
Okay.
and we had hoped that there wouldn't be any crisscross, but I think you just heard our guest who's coming in later on
Okay.
that sheet. So there's a ghost. We know who it is.
Thank you very much again, I appreciate it.
Okay,
Thank
before
you.
you go, I'm going to say that, of course, with all these types of reports, I always go and chat with staff and see if we're helping, how we can help, and kind of where the links are. And I understand that the Evangeline Club is part of the Homeless No More and the regional collective efforts, which is absolutely wonderful, because, you know, it was so important to bring everybody together so that we have basically a single mission going forward on that. And I also understand that there are times when you serve as emergency sheltering for Open Arms here in Kentville. So we already have, I'm going to say, those two links with Kentville. You have 25% of your clients are coming from Kentville. The town of Kentville does have a spike fund, and any person who calls Kentville their home can get funding through that. And just by visiting our recreation department. The other thing as well is that our staff are these very, very amazing grant writers, and I realize that you don't want to live off of grants, but you know, until you get that true stream of funding, you know, there are times when grants are what can get you to the next day and, you know, the next year sort of thing. So you know, I will put you in touch with our staff, and perhaps something can be worked out there. We truly appreciate the work that you're doing. The town of Kentville does do grant allocation. But typically our grant allocation is more for programming. It's not typically for operations. And as you have explained to us, you know, you are looking for operational funding. However, if you were planning on doing a special project, where let's say you were putting a greenhouse on top of your amazing garden, then that could be a special project where that, you know, that type of input to our grant would fit the bill.
Thank you so much.
You're quite welcome. So thank you again for
Great.
presenting this evening.
Thank you.
All right, moving right along, the directors have provided their reports for council review and will provide an update and receive questions from council. The reports will be presented and are part of the record of this meeting. Only items of new business arising from the reports will be taken for motion. CEO Troke, if you could introduce our department reports, please.
Thank you, Mayor. So tonight, as we do at every CAC, we're going to be starting off with our finance folks. So Director Matthews is going to come up and be starting with the director's report, operating and capital forecasts.
Perfect, thank you. I was listening so intently, I didn't keep myself organized, my apologies. So you do have the director's report, as noted, and good evening, everyone, for July and August. I did note within the report that our final tax bills had gone out. You can see our total levy is $12,188,511. I have included a highlight document that was a collaborative effort from a few of us to go out with tax bills, and we have received at least one very positive comment around how that information was useful and easier to access than going through our website and kind of trying to pull all that information together. So very open to additional feedback as we try and improve communications over time. I did also include in my report that It was helpful to have a conversation with our municipal advisor in August to try and build that relationship as a new employee here with the town. I've also wanted to share some of the provincial recording requirements, those that I have completed and those that are to be completed by the end of September. I will clarify those are for the 23-24 year, so those are prospective reporting. The last item, when it talks about the financial information return, that is one that comes out, that'll be due the end of September. I haven't received it, but we do have some draft data for 21-22 for our financial condition report that comes out periodically from the province. So hopefully we'll see those coming out in coming months. We have replaced our accountant position. Jill has started and is working out quite swimmingly, which is fabulous. I also have noted that we have public availability of all of our financial and budget reports that have come out over the course of the summer. So those are uploaded on our website, and we have completed our compliance reporting with the bank, which I think is important from your perspective as well. I do have included in the package a capital budget update. It is Appendix B. And it does outline our budget of $6,605,900, the areas that we intend to spend. I have updated that for the forecast for this year. There are a few projects that we are not going to be spending at the rate that we anticipated. So you can see our forecast is $5,461,900. We are at an actual at this point of $833,212. That would be the end of July. We know a lot of progress billings have not come in on the larger projects. So that should relate back to the approved budget that would have happened on August the 27th. The items that we have removed, you can see, are in the McDonald Henry Bray side. There was a $200,000 item that we aren't anticipating being able to get concluded before the end of the fiscal year. Also, there is work happening, with relationship to the ICIP, the Donald Hills Connector. So that project, there is a archaeological impact assessment that is happening right now. That portion of the report we anticipate coming in later in the fall, but that will delay our starting the construction in that phase. So you'll see those costs just running over into next year for the majors. So that's the largest decrease there. And one of our pieces of equipment we don't anticipate being in by year end. So those are the items that are adjusted for in the forecast, and you will see that as we talk about another agenda item around why we're not looking to borrow as much as we anticipated as well. We also have provided for you a Appendix C, which is the statement of operations for the month to date, of July 31st, 2023. That 4 months of the year, we would anticipate if we were spending straight line, we'd be at about 33%. Many of our areas certainly exceed the 33%, just given the nature of the timing of our expenditures. I won't go through it in a huge amount of detail, but I would highlight a few items. One, our tax revenue is at 47% versus what the 33 would be, because we do an interim bill based on last year's taxes. This is July. Our bills went out in August, so you're not seeing the full year there. Our other revenue, owned sources, is at about 12% versus the 33 you would expect, but a lot of our rentals happen in the fall into winter. So that is a big number there, which you can see particularly in the recreation department budget. You will have also noted on the statement of operations that general admin is almost 47% spent, but all of our insurance is still recorded there. We have to still do that reallocation. We are trying to get caught up and train our new accountants, so that one has not occurred yet. I also note that Valley Waste Resource, which falls in Environmental Health Services, is showing at 53.5, and that is because our first 2 quarter payments are in there. So we make them in July for the upcoming quarter. I also mention a few other items that are timing issues. As well, we made a one-time payment to KDCL, which brought that percentage spent up a little higher. And lastly, I would note that there are significant seasonal fluctuations within recreation and cultural area, which drive their percentages of change. If you do look at that category, though, you may see that last year we spent much less as a percentage than this year. In particular, I noted the Canada Cup. It was a much larger event this year with more expenditure, but we have received a significant amount of funding up to the end of July, and we know there's additional funding coming. So it looks a little off now, but it will balance itself out. So those were the key areas I wanted to mention. Overall, our total expenditures are at about 34%, which is reasonable as a whole. And we don't anticipate at this point any significant deviations from our budget. We do plan on doing more detailed projections with our directors for September results. So that is our operating budget that I have shared. And the last item on the agenda, which has been top of mind, I know, for IT and administration here, is around cybersecurity. And given recent events, we know that there's a significant impact to town operations, to citizens, to employees when a breach does occur. So to mitigate those risks, we have been investigating the addition of cyber insurance. So to assure you that that is something we are addressing to ensure that we're covered for that. The other items are separate agenda items. Would you like me to move right into those, or would you like questions
We'll
for
go
the
with
first?
questions on this part of your reports.
Sure.
Deputy Mayor, please.
Thank you, Worship. I think probably direct this to CAO Troke through the chair. With respect to, obviously, when we did the budget up, we did not anticipate that we would have to do an archaeological impact study. How long of a delay will this cause? Thank you.
Through the chair. So basically what happens is, as part of your consultation with First Nations community, if any of them would ask that it be done, then you would follow up with that. Really, from a delay, it took about a month to get, we had 3 parties give us quotes. We anticipate that the work, the physical on-site work and the historical review would be done likely in October. So it kind of would say there's about a 3-month window of just additional timing to have that done.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any further questions on these reports? None? All right then. Wanda, the floor is yours for temporary borrowing.
Okay. So you'll see before you, we have temporary borrowing resolutions related to our capital budget. The Department of Municipal Affairs and Housing does require us to provide a temporary resolution to them in order to have any borrowing related to a capital acquisition for this year. And then in the spring or next fall, as those items or capital projects are concluded and we go to get a debenture or have long-term debt around those, that temporary borrowing is removed. So it is truly just a bridge financing opportunity here. We do have we have 3 items here for the town of Kentville related to 3 separate budgets. So the first budget that we would be looking to borrow on behalf of would be the Kentville Water Commission. In that budget, there is an investment of $1 million related to the Donald Hiltz Connector project. And that debt, we paid 26.67%, so the budget had 266.7. based on the comment that we just made around not being able to move forward at the pace that we thought at that project. We're anticipating that we will be doing some work, so we have put in 50,000 for temporary boring, which would be 26.6, or 26.67 share of approximately 150,000. So that would be the first request, and I would recommend that we approve, that the Council Advisory Committee approves temporary boring for that amount of 50,000 and recommends that through to the council at the end of the month.
Thank you, Director. So the motion would be that CAC recommends to the September 25th, 2023 council meeting approval of a temporary borrowing resolution, TBR, in the amount of $50,000 in support of the ICIP Donald Hiltz Connector. Someone could move that, please. Deputy Mayor, for the second, Councillor Huntley. It has been moved and seconded that CAC recommend to the September 25th, 2023 council meeting approval of a temporary borrowing resolution in the amount of $50,000 in support of ICIP Donald Hiltz Connector. Is there any discussion on this matter? Are you ready for the question? The question is that CAC recommend to the September 25th, 2023 council meeting approval of a temporary borrowing resolution in the amount of $50,000 in support of the ICIP Donald Hiltz Connector. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed, and the motion is carried. Thank you. Director?
Okay. The next resolution relates to the Town of Kentville General Capital Fund Capital Investment Plan that was approved on April the 27th of this year. The predicted borrowing for that was $3,017,457. I mentioned in the capital update there were a few items that we were unable to spend. We anticipate not spending this year. Those values included borrowing, and so that brings our $3,017,000 to $2,390,000 would be what we would be looking for that temporary borrowing for this fiscal year. I have included for your information with the resolution a Schedule A of capital projects, so you can see what those projects relate to. There is a small amount for protective services. Parks and recreation would be the grandstand, and then in transportation, our equipment and infrastructure, green infrastructure fund, and streets and sidewalks, and the storm sewer work of $377. So that comes to the $2,390,000. So I would be recommending to Council Advisory Committee that you approve us obtaining temporary borrowing for the amount of $2,390,000 and recommend that that moves forward to Council for approval. So that.
Thank you, Director. And the motion is that CAC recommends to the September 25th, 2023 council meeting approval of a temporary borrowing resolution in the amount of $2,390,000 in support of Schedule A capital projects. If someone could move that, please. Councillor Huntley? Deputy Mayor, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that CAC recommend to the September 25th, 2023 council meeting approval of a temporary borrowing resolution in the amount of $2,390,000 in support of Schedule A capital projects. Is there any discussion on this matter? Are you ready for the question? The question is that CAC recommends to the September 25th, 2023 council meeting approval of a temporary borrowing resolution in the amount of $2,390,000 in support of Schedule A capital projects. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed, and the motion is carried. Thank you, Director.
We have one additional borrowing resolution. However, it relates to the sanitary sewer capital budget that is coming before council later this evening. So my suggestion to council is that we bring it forward at that time, rather than approve the borrowing on a budget that you haven't approved yet, if
All right,
if that's
Director?
agreeable. to
We'll
you,
bring you,
Chair.
we'll bring you back for that one then.
Okay.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Are there any questions before the director leaves that anyone, nothing? All right, thank you very much. And we're moving on to planning and development. And I believe Kirsten Duncan is here this evening.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. Thank you. You have my report that we've submitted for the month of September 2023 for the Planning and Development Department. A few things that I'd like to highlight within the report is that in the month of July, we had 13 development permits that were issued, which is an increase from last year of 7 permits, with a total building valuation of $4,894,496. In the month of August, we had 14 development permits that were issued, which is an increase of 5 additional permits from last year, with a total building valuation of $2,175,149. Our activity and development permit report is attached to that report tonight. Other things that I'd like to highlight are we've had 2 subdivision files that were submitted in July and 3 new subdivision files that were submitted in August, as well as a few site plan approval packages that went out for comment to the community. 2 things to note about the Kentville Visitor Center. So the historic Kentville video was launched by the Visitor Center page last month and was positively received by all audiences. In addition, Sunday, October 8th will sadly be their last day of operation for this year. Our staff have done great work, so thanks to them. Staff have organized a community yard sale for the park location on the closing day. There are still a few table spaces available, so if anybody wants to book those, get in contact with them. This year, for the Pumpkin People Festival, our theme has been announced as Under the Sea. We are partnering with Valley Waste to promote Waste Reduction Week and keeping the benches clean campaigns, which are a good tie-in to this year's theme. Lindsay is working on developing some activities and workshops around pumpkin people that promote waste reduction. And she is hopeful to be able to include a workshop where folks can learn how to make Jerry's pop bottle fishes that you can see on the back ramp entrance of Town Hall, which are very awesome. A couple other upcoming dates to be aware of is the Multicultural Festival, which is slated for this weekend, September 16th. Keep an eye on the Facebook pages for any updates in relation to that. In addition, we have the Kentville Harvest Festival, which is coming up on October 7th. And of course, Pumpkin People Festival runs from October 7th to the 29th. And then, even though it seems crazy, we are also looking forward to Holidays Festival, which is going to be on November 17th. A couple projects to highlight for you folks tonight. We have 2 more reports that are coming up that our planner is going to provide to you, the presentation to you later this after me. One is about MPS amendments, and that's just for some minimum planning, there are some amendments that need to be done to our MPS to meet the minimum planning standards for the province. And then also there is a rezoning application that's coming forward along Prospect Avenue. So like I said, the planner will follow up on those in greater detail after my presentation here is done. Staff would like to just note that we are encouraged by the ongoing success of the Center Square Activation Project, and we'd really like to thank our partners, Kentville Business Community, the Kentville Lions, Kentville Farmers Market, and others who have helped us transform the space and how people view it and the use of it. As the space becomes more popular, some new signage outlining the amenities and the hours of use will be added. The signs are on order and will be installed once they're delivered. And one final note, community development was recently awarded grant funding from the Beautification and Streetscaping Program in the amount of $10,000. The funding will support the planting of blossoming trees in designated areas along a route stretching from Park Street to Main Street. More details to come. Locations are still being scouted, but we hope to be able to plant at least 15 new trees around that route. And that is my report this evening.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any questions for Ms. Duncan?
What's the result?
Oh, no, sir, you can't ask questions. Just counsel.
Oh, I can ask questions?
No, you can't, sorry.
Okay.
That's okay. Maybe somebody will ask the question for you. You'll get it in more detail in a minute.
All right.
Are there any questions? Councillor York?
Thank you. I know it's likely due to budgetary reasons, and maybe we can, through the chair and the CAO, put it in the budget for next year, but allowing the visitor center to have an extended season into the Pumpkin People Festival. I think the building perhaps needs some upgrading, winterization, and then funding for that schedule, but it would be nice to have our center open for visitors who are coming in our busiest month. I'm sure that's been thought of by staff. This is not a novel idea. I just would like to put that out there. Thank you.
Anything further? No? All right then. So there are two matters related to planning, which will be presented by C&D Planner via Zoom. And C&D has been contracted by the town of Kentville to carry out some planning tasks. And Kirsten, if you could please introduce the C&D Planner and get us moving on Zoom.
Yes, thank you. So I'm going to get the TV set up here. We're going to have Caroline do a presentation on both the MPS amendments and the rezoning for us this evening. And hopefully we'll only be momentarily setting this up for you folks.
Okay, thank you.
Goes back to.
It will also be visible up top too.
Ideally,
Yeah, got her.
just not here yet.
Can you hear us, Carolyn?
You in? One or two?
Can you see us?
Okay.
I can see you guys.
Okay, we can hear you.
Awesome. Are we still setting up, or would you like me to start?
Okay, we're good to go.
Okay. Well, I would like to start out by saying it's very nice to meet you all, sort of, and see your faces now. Kirsten messaged me recently about the first item on the agenda and asked if my company would be interested in supporting the town of Kentville through the process of doing an amendment that's required. And since it would take, I figured since it was going to take me a few months to get through that amendment and you required some planning services, that I'd also offer to help out where I could, should you have any other amendments. So my name is Caroline Robertson, and I'm going to be your planner until January, the end of January. I own my own company. It's called C&D Community Design, and we're based in Yarmouth, Nova Scotia. So I have a few junior planners and a senior planner who founded the company with me. So you may see them along the way, but I'll be your principal planner. I do have my master's in planning studies with Bachelor Community Design with honors in urban design, and I am a licensed practicing planner for Canada, within Canada. So hopefully I can be of some service to you over the next few months. And you know, one of the things I do want to point out as we get started is that it's really difficult working with a new council when it comes to planning matters, because what we're really talking about is the future and what your values are as a community. And those are things that you learn as you get to know people. So if there is ever an instance where we've maybe misunderstood, or there's a situation where I make an assumption about something that's wrong, please correct me. That is just it's so important here that we communicate effectively and get to know each other, and that the documents that I'm working on actually reflect your values. So with that said, I'm not sure if I should share my screen or not. I do have a PowerPoint I could go through, or I can just click through it and talk to you as I go, whichever is easiest. I don't want to mess up your technical situation.
Let's try your PowerPoint and see what happens. That way
See if
our
I can
audience
share
can see
it.
it as well.
Okay. Okay. So I can't see video anymore. So are you guys seeing my screen?
I can see we can see the PowerPoint, and we still have you in a thumbnail.
Oh, okay, perfect. Okay, I just can't see you. So again, if you have any questions or anything along the way, or need me to stop because I can't read your faces, just let me know.
Not an issue.
So the first item that we have on the agenda tonight is a consultation with neighboring governing bodies. And this is an amendment that is required to your municipal planning strategy. Okay, so I was trying to remember how long ago this happened. It was within my time. It's probably been about 5 years now, but the province made some amendments to the Municipal Government Act, which required that municipalities have planning documents. And one of the requirements was also that municipalities within their planning documents explain how that they intend to engage with abutting municipalities when it comes to considering planning and development within their areas. So the town of Kentville missed the deadline to meet this requirement, and you've received an extension for fall 2023.
Are we frozen? I think you're frozen.
Act is section 204A. Can you still hear me? It's saying my internet is spotty.
Yep, we've got the proposal up.
Okay, perfect. So basically, because you're far behind on this a little bit, our team was able to actually take advantage of that and do a complete policy review of other municipalities and what they adopted to meet this requirement that the province has enacted, which gave us kind of a really good idea of different options that you could have and the best way to move forward. One of the main concerns here, and if you look at my report that I've provided, it is more in depth. But what is really important here is to consider where there are shared assets, and also how much you want to collaborate with your abutting municipalities, how much you want them involved when it comes to planning and development issues. So for anybody in the audience who doesn't know or understand this, the municipal planning strategy is kind of the guiding planning document for your municipality. It's really important. It's a higher arching document that looks at long-term goals for the future within your community. And it is a requirement of the provincial government that you have this planning document. So within this, we're making a few suggestions for changes within your planning strategy to meet those requirements that the province has asked for. The first is to consider adopting a policy that will support cooperation between the Kings County and the town of planning matters. We've written a fairly basic statement, but something that might be worth considering, and again, this is, we're really just trying to understand and learn your council and how you might feel about these things, but one of the options that the Municipal Government Act does offer is if you don't have a planning advisory committee and you're interested in having a shared one with an adjacent municipality, then that's an option for you. And I do know, since we're presenting today to committee at council, that you at the moment do not have a planning advisory committee, so I thought that was worth bringing up, that that's an option or a suggestion if you're open to working with the neighboring municipality when it comes to planning matters. The second that I want to highlight is that the Municipal Government Act requires, when it comes to planning, they have a number of statements of provincial interest, and these statements must be worked into your municipal planning documents. And one of those statements pertains to protecting the quality of drinking water within municipal water supply watersheds. So, and it is our understanding that you share your watershed with Kings County. So that was a really important statement, and one that would come up with considering how to work together in collaboration when it comes to protecting the water quality. Other things we were thinking about is how will abutting municipalities be notified when you're considering planning documents, and also under what circumstances when you're considering planning changes to your planning documents, under what circumstances you would like them to be notified and how you'd like to engage them. So the first proposed policy change that we're recommending is that we add a new policy under Chapter 11.2.1. Under policy MS1, we would be adding MS2. And for this policy, the statement that we have put together for you is, Council shall inform the municipality of the County of Kings when improvements and or major maintenance are planned for the shared water utility owned by the town that extends into the County of Kings. So ideally, the intent behind the statement would be to add a required cooperation with the municipality and the County of Kings on the water service. And a lot of these things I assume you're already doing, but it's just about making sure that it's written in your documents that you meet those requirements.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. So we do have a water commission, and on our water commission, we have the Kings County engineer, and we also have a Kings County elected official as members of our water commission. So does that change anything in this policy?
No, I think that's wonderful, and it sounds like you're already doing exactly what the policy states.
Okay.
It's really just making sure that it's written in your planning document so that the province is aware that you're following the regulations and policies that have been put forth in the Municipal Government Act.
Okay.
So I think I actually do mention, so the next proposed policy, we do mention that there is the Kentville Water Commission and how you work together. And it's more just about continuing to work collaboratively and having these policies adopted, showing what you're doing. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. I just wondered if we had to include a statement with regards to the fact that we had membership from Kings County on our commission in the planning documents.
I think that this next one that we're talking about covers that, but
Okay.
if you feel that the wording doesn't quite, we can work on it and add that. But I don't think this is really just about showing that you're working on collaboratively. So as long as, even if it's hierarching, it doesn't have to get into specifics. So for the next proposed policy change, and this I think is where we would look at talking about what your question. We're recommending that you amend. Sorry.
That's good.
So
That's
we're
good.
looking at amending the existing policy MS5, which is in chapter 11. And what it currently says is it should be the intention of council to work cooperatively with municipalities and other levels of government to promote conservation, protection, and management of groundwater resources through. And this is where we've added the Kentville Water Commission, Kings Regional Sewer Committee, and Valley Regional Solid Waste Resource Management Authority. To ensure, so this existing statement already requires that the municipalities work collaboratively, but it does not outline how. So by adding the names of the authorities created and providing clarity to the policy, we feel that helps to meet the requirement that the province is looking for.
Before you go on, Carolyn, could we make one addition to that? Next to Valley Regional Solid Waste Resource Management Authority, could you put in brackets that this is an intermunicipal service agreement?
Yes, I absolutely can do that.
Okay, and the only reason I ask for that is that the name of it may change from Valley Regional Solid Waste Resource Management Authority, just the way that we're structuring ourselves with our new municipal service agreements.
Okay, yeah,
Thank you.
I'm absolutely happy to do that.
Thank you.
Okay, and then our next policy change recommendation is to amend the existing policy MS15. And just, I didn't really go over this before I started, but what we've done is where we've taken words out, we've crossed them out in red, and where we've added words, we've underlined them in green, just to try and give you an understanding of how we've changed the policy. So for this one, it should be the intention of council to support and encourage the municipality of the County of Kings to implement planning and land use control provisions that protect the quality of water supply from the Wellfield area and Lake McGee, consistent with the recommendations of the Kentville Water Commission source water protection plan for those lands in the county which are located within the Wellfield area. And I do apologize. I want to highlight that within the report that was distributed, there was a misunderstanding about the difference between the Lake McGee being the backup source and the Wellfield area being the primary source. So we have made those updates within the report. So should council move forward with public engagement, any changes that we discussed tonight will be in the revised version that would be distributed to the public.
Carolyn, on that one, can you add, after Kentville Water Commission, comma, the Source Water Protection Advisory Group? Because we do have an advisory group, and on that group, we have the engineer from Kings County, we have the Kings County planner, and we have a member of their council. So the collaboration
Absolutely.
occurs, but.
Would you mind repeating that?
Certainly,
just one more
so could you
time?
put in the
No.
term Source Water Protection Advisory Group?
Source Water Protection Advisory Group.
Yes. And that is a standing committee of council because of our well fields. And it is composed of 3 members from Kings County, their engineer, their planner, and a member of council, plus our members.
Okay.
Thank you.
Perfect. Yes, I can make that change. Okay, so by revising this policy again, I mean, I'm gonna keep reiterating this. You guys are already doing a lot of shared work and engagement and collaboration with your adjacent municipality, but this is just we're just updating the policy so that they're clearer about what exactly is being done. Okay, and then so this is the one that we may want to talk about a little bit. So the final proposed policy is D, and it's a new policy. We're suggesting putting it as IM 17 under Chapter 15. So what it says is that council shall notify the municipality of the County of Kings when considering amendments to the municipal planning strategy. This will include sending a copy of the planner's report to their council. If an amendment to the municipal planning strategy with a site-specific focus or a development agreement is being considered within 150 meters of a shared boundary, then council shall include a letter requesting feedback to the County of Kings Council and a copy of the planner's report. So basically what this does is this outlines a notification process for when you're considering big changes to your community. So if you're looking at doing a development agreement that is close to the municipal boundaries, or if you're looking at making a large municipal planning strategy amendment change, and pretty much any change you make to your municipal planning strategy is considered large, that is intended for a site-specific development that would be near the boundaries. This is saying that you will notify them, and then if they're within if it's within a certain distance, you'll actually request that they provide feedback. So this is we came up with this policy based on looking at what other municipalities have done, but again, it's entirely up to your council how you wish to move forward with collaborating with the municipality of the County of Kings when it comes to your planning document. So this is our suggestion, but it is open to feedback.
Okay, that's your last one?
That is the last policy, so I can go into next steps, but if you'd like to discuss this now, I'm happy to.
Okay, I've got a couple lights on here. Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Worship.
All right.
Thank you, Carolyn. I guess my question more so not to Carolyn, but the CAO and the mayor. I don't quite understand what valley waste has to do with Kentville water.
Sure. So I think basically as all entities, so in Valley Waste, for example, if they were to expand a C&D component of their facility or whatnot, that would have to be notification, because essentially any kind of runoff from something like that could have implications. So this is broad catching anything that would potentially fall within our MPS that has to do with water, groundwater protection. And again, a lot of this language, and I think Carolyn has pointed to, you may have practices in place and things you're already doing. This is for greater clarity, things that the province really would like to see across documents. So it's that kind of housekeeping is making its way into the documents. So it's really quite broad from that perspective and not as specific. I mean, I think you'd look at it and say, what's the linear equation here between Valley Waste and that?
Yep.
It's that broader sense of it to say we're acknowledging anything that could and woulda, shoulda happened. We're saying if it could impact the water supply, then it's part of the conversation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. So through the chair, I'll direct it to Caroline. Hi, Caroline. Nice to meet you. Just a question around the new policy IM 17. So I find that one, it appears to be a bit generic, a bit general. And when we talk about that council shall include a letter requesting feedback from the County of Kings Council and a copy of the planner's report. So what sort of letter, what sort of feedback are we looking for from the County of Kings? Is it that they would express to us that they're in support of what we're looking at doing at a piece of land that's within 150 meters from, excuse me, the shared boundary? Or like, I guess what are we really looking for? It just seems very general. Would we just want them to acknowledge it? Thank you.
So I made it general on purpose.
Okay.
I haven't worked with your council much in the past, and I didn't want you to end up committed to, like, let's say that you have a disagreement with the municipality municipality of the County of Kings on a development that is happening within your boundaries. I want council to be able to take their feedback and consider it, but still be able to make their own decision. I guess that's why I wrote it the way I did.
Okay.
So the idea is that you would share the report, my report or whatever, whoever your planner is at the time, and we will have to do that as part of this process when it comes to this amendment that we're discussing right now. The idea is that you would send the report to them so that they just know that some development is happening within your community, and then if it becomes close to their boundary, then you would request as a council their feedback, and it's up to you to take that and do with it as you will. Consider their feedback and decide how you want to move forward with the development that you're considering. And that's fairly standard when it comes to how public engagement works in general. If you send out a planning, if you're considering a planning amendment and you put it out to the public and you hold a public engagement session, which again we're going to have to do with this one, or you have a public hearing, council listens to what everybody has to say and then takes their technical report from their staff and kind of tries to use all the data and information that they've gathered to make their final decision. So I just didn't want to have you stuck on having to make a decision based on the feedback that you receive from the County of Kings. I think it's really important to share with them and hear back what they have to say, but not necessarily for you to have to make the decision that they feel you should.
Thank you very much, Carolyn.
Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you. I'm not sure who to direct this. It's mostly just curiosity, but I'm wondering, since we've got an extension here, and I'm assuming the County of Kings has already gone through this type of process, are they informing us when they have a development close to our boundary? Do we get the same information and so on? We get told and things like that?
I can't I can't speak to what's in their documentation. I do know I get notices from them when it comes to anything that would be, I can't say within a distance, but I do get notices when there's different things that are going on. But again, I can't speak to specifics because I haven't really looked that close at their planning documents, whether it's a requirement or not.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Maxwell, when they built their public works garage, because it's in the area of our source water protection, it did come up at both source water and it went to the planning department that they were doing that before it happened.
Okay. Yeah, I would just hope it's going both ways.
Yep. Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, and Councillor Maxwell asked part of my question, but Caroline, can I get clarification?
Sorry, I'm flicking around because I thought I might have the answer to the last question, but it's not my document's not opened. Sorry, continue on. I hope that wasn't distracting you.
No, so what I'm reading is council will notify the municipality of any change in our MPS, not just one that is 150 meters of a shared boundary.
Yes, so you'd notify by sending a copy of the planner's report. I wouldn't expect that much more than that wouldn't be required. And then when it comes to one that is closer to the shared boundary, at that point you would request that they provide feedback on the report.
Okay, thank you.
And that did happen when we did our MPS the last time. And when Kings County did their big consultation, we were all invited to their consultation, but as well, they sent it back to us to review. All right, Carolyn, I think we've pretty much beat that one to death. So we do have a recommendation from you that we approve the policy recommendations for adoption into the MPS. So the motion would be that CAC recommend to the September 25th, 2023 council meeting approval of the proposed MPS policy recommendations as provided in the C&D report dated 15th of August, 2023. If someone could move that, please.
I'm
Oh,
so sorry.
just
I
wait,
wanna
my
interrupt. Just
solicitor
because
is
there's been-
standing up.
Sorry,
Because there's been
I think
changes.
Caroline's going to make a comment on it, which was probably going to be my comment. That's not really the motion going to council yet.
Okay, it's a recommendation.
I'll leave it to Caroline to comment.
Okay,
I'm sorry, I can't see you, and I know usually council's so formal, it's really hard to, I don't want to interrupt, but because we've made a few changes already, just as we moved through, I would require that the motion
first reading.
be that the report move forward with the changes that you've requested.
So if I could, I believe what Carolyn is saying is that with the changes made today, that the report would move forward to council. So council would see the report with the revisions at the next meeting.
So we're not actually doing anything?
Right.
Okay.
So Caroline is Jeff Matart, and I'm the municipal solicitor for the town of Kentville, and you can't see me because everything's all turned around backwards here at the moment. And so I just wanted to clarify for the mayor that it's the report that's going to council, and CAC is not making a recommendation to council at this point because it will be first reading at council. So if you wanted to make a recommendation, it would be for first reading, not for adoption of the changes at this point, because council's not going to make that decision until after it goes to a public hearing.
Okay,
Yeah, as sort of, I'm so sorry. I just want to make sure that this is clear. Because you guys don't have a planning advisory committee, the Municipal Government Act does require that you do a public participation program at the council committee level. So your next step will actually be to move to public participation at this committee level with those changes that we discussed in the report.
So our process, as the solicitor mentioned, would be this will go to council for first reading, and at which point in time, then it would go to the.
she's saying no.
No,
She's saying
no,
it has
you
to
don't go to
be-
first reading until after the public participation programs
Oh.
happened at council, at your
Okay.
committee level.
Okay.
So the report's just simply going to council.
So
That's right. So on this one, as opposed to another one that's on the agenda, it triggers the public participation process. And so typically, historically, you as council might not even see this before the planner took it to the public participation meeting. And at which time there would be that initial feedback. Then it would come forward to council for first reading. Council would deal with it and schedule its public hearing, which may or may not be on a council, the same date as a council meeting, and then you would deal with second reading. So at this point, I guess I'm looking to Caroline because, like I say, Caroline, council hasn't historically been involved in the scheduling of the public participation meeting, I don't believe. So whether that's going to be left with staff to schedule the public participation meeting and simply inform everybody at this stage.
So does
Yeah.
CAC recommend to the September 25th, 2023 council meeting review of the proposed MPS policy recommendations and schedule a public participation meeting? Is that what we're doing? Is that what we're recommending to council?
Yes, yeah. So and then this can be done at your next council committee, at your next scheduled council committee. You can hold the public participation program prior, and then at that meeting, if your committee is prepared, then you can move it to first reading at council at that point.
So you're fine with what you said.
Okay, so we'll go, this will get us there. So that CAC recommend to the September 25th, 2023 council meeting review of the proposed MPS policy recommendations and schedule a public participation meeting. Someone could move that, please. Councillor Maxwell, thank you. Seconder? Councillor York, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that CAC recommend to the September 25th, 2023 council meeting review of the proposed MPS policy recommendations and schedule a public participation meeting. Is there any further discussion on this? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. So I just want to be clear that these are the proposal policies A, B, C, and D, because there is a section in there, and Caroline, you might be able to my apologies, Your Worship, through the chair. You may be able to clarify this, but there is another recommendation in there when it talks about recommended the council consider adopting a policy that will support planning cooperation between town and MOC. Planning it to the Municipal Government Act permits municipalities to have shared planning advisory committee and authorities. As the town does not have a planning advisory committee, this may be a good option to consider. I just want to make sure that that recommendation isn't part of proposal policy A, B, C, and D. Clarification around that. Thank you.
No, that is not part of it right now. That was just outlining that could potentially be an option for you if you were interested.
Okay, thank you, Caroline.
Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you. So just for some clarification, could we hold the public participation part of this just prior to our review of the MPS changes, and then we go into a council meeting and we move those changes? Can we do it that way?
Carolyn, so based on what you've said, can we do it can we hold a meeting, a public participation meeting, and then go to council for first reading? Review and first reading?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
So because typically this is done at a planning advisory committee level, so that's where it's getting confusing, is that
Yep.
it's already being presented to the council, but how the Municipal Government Act requires it, this move forward, is that, so your CAC or your council committee has to do the public participation program at that level, at your committee level. So you can do it before your next CAC meeting, and then after that, after the public participation program happens and you hear from the public, then you can make the motion to move to first reading, because this will also require a public hearing. So after first reading, it should it make it that far, then you would move on to recommending to a public hearing, and then you'd have second reading in your decision at council.
Okay,
It's
very
quite a long process. It will take us more than a few months.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Councillor Gerard.
Yeah, this isn't a technical question. How far out are we? When was this supposed to be done?
I know that we received an extension in June. I don't know the specifics of when all of the information was due. I know the province reached out to Kirsten, and that was part of our initial conversations with them.
Okay, thank you.
All right, is there any further discussion on the matter? Are you ready for the question? The question is that CAC recommend to the September 25th council meeting review of the proposed MPS policy recommendation and schedule a public participation meeting. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed, and the motion is carried. Thank you very much. All right, Carolyn, the floor is yours again for the next one.
I'm using multiple screens. I'm trying to get my mouse over. Okay. Here we go. And I'm not still sharing screen, am I?
No.
No. Okay. Let's try that again. Okay. So your development staff have received a proposal for a single unit dwelling, which is basically a one-person household, not one-person household. It's a one home or a single detached dwelling. And they've received this application for PID 551129999. And the reason that we're bringing it to you, because generally, single-family homes are not something that requires a rezoning, but the reason this is being brought to you is because they wish to build a single-unit dwelling. We've received the application from their authorized agent, but currently, this property is zoned R5. And what they're asking is that a portion of the property be rezoned to R1 in order to allow the single-unit dwelling to be built. And the one thing that I want to highlight right away is that right now this property does not have services running to it, and that will be the responsibility of the property owner, the cost of running the services for the development, regardless of what happens with the zoning. Looking for my mouse again. Okay. So the proposal is to rezone a portion of the R5 lot to permit the development of a single-family dwelling. The reason that they want this proposed change, and so you can see on my slide, it's a proposed lot, so it hasn't actually been subdivided, and what they're actually suggesting right now is that it's a split zoning, so that just this section becomes rezoned and the rest remains R5, and this would become R1. And the reason that this is being suggested is because R5 zoning has much larger lot requirements, and the applicant would like to allow for the development to proceed while still leaving the remainder of the land for future development. So the idea is to be more economical with the land and be able to leave an option for future development by reducing those lot requirements. So when we receive applications for rezoning, we always start with the municipal planning strategy. And I apologize, I see a typo immediately, but large lot residential, which is R5, not R1, was created by council for several large tracts of land within the town of Kentville, and many of these R5 lots that are in existence are unserviced, and there are no immediate plans for the future. So they're just very large lots that are unserviced, and that's how council has used this zoning. The MPS policy 15.9.2 states that a rezoning will allow the property to develop for more intensive uses. So kind of reading into that, the idea that by split zoning a portion of the property to allow development, it'll allow for more intensive development in the future on the property, should that be of interest to the property owner. Council also requires detailed development plans to consider rezoning, which your development staff have received as a result of this application. But I will note, council requires this in order to be considered for rezoning. However, should the property be rezoned, whatever the rezoning is in the end, any uses that are permitted on that as part of that rezoning are allowed. So they don't actually have to stick to the detailed development plans that are required. So just so you're aware of that, if you look at the detailed plans and we move forward with a rezoning, whatever is permitted within the R1 zone would be allowed within that portion of the lot. Council offers a list of evaluation criteria for rezoning within the municipal planning strategy, and staff have reviewed that in full detail using the detailed development plans that we've received from the applicant, and we see no issues at this point in time. Okay, so the first thing I do as a planner is I look at council's future generalized land use map to see if it's possible to even rezone a property to what's being requested. So this is kind of a blown up version looking at the subject property, but what the yellow area is all residential. And what that means is that council's designated this area for residential development in the future, but you've used different residential zoning for each of the property when it comes to your zoning maps. But by having this residential designation, it means that we're able to rezone within, we're able to use a residential zoning for any of the properties that fall under this designation. And I went backwards. I apologize. Okay. So, sorry, you go right ahead if you have a question.
No.
Nope, good, okay. So the proposed zoning changes. The existing property is zoned R5, and it's located in an area that has a variety of single residential unit dwellings, which are zoned R1, and commercial recreation, which are CR. Oh my goodness, it keeps going the wrong way. There we go. So the proposed zoning change is to rezone, and I keep saying this because split zoning is not, some municipalities do this and some don't. A split zoning is kind of its own planning concept in itself, but what they're looking to do is look solely at this small portion of the larger property and rezone it to R1. And here is why. So technically the applicant can build a single family home with the R5 zoning or the R1 zoning. So they are able to build no matter what council's final decision is. However, if you look at my table here, the R1 zoning has significantly less lot area and frontage requirements compared to the R5 zoning. And so, I also provided the details of the proposed area that they would like to split zone. So by rezoning the property to R1, what we're doing is actually allowing them to build closer to the street and on a smaller lot, which would leave the remainder of the R5 lot open for future residential development, should there be interest in doing that. Basically maintaining the potential for the remainder of that lot. Okay. So this one is a lot less complicated than the last one. This is simply a rezoning, which is a change to your land use bylaw map. The next step, if you're comfortable with the applicant's request, would be for you to move this to council for first reading. And then from there, after first reading, it would require a public hearing before second reading and a final decision.
All right, that's great, Carolyn. So, Deputy Mayor, you have a question?
I do have a question. Thank you, Worship. I'll, if I can, go through the chair.
Okay.
Or sorry, yes, let's go through the chair. So Caroline, you had mentioned that split zoning was, some municipalities do it and some don't. So I'm looking at this area and I think it reads that it's about 28.39 acres. Do you know if there were any discussions around what the remaining lands look like? I'm just, this would be something new for me to see that a portion of an R5 land, just a very small portion of it that doesn't have services, that it would be rezoned to R1. So I'm just kind of wondering what kind of dialogue was had around what the future plans were for the remainder of the land. And also the water, sewer, and storm sewer, I'm assuming that the hookup, the connection with that portion of that PID would just be for the purposes of that property, for that segregated piece from the larger 28 acres on the PID. That's a lot, but thank you.
Yes. So right now I'm calling it remainder land because
Okay.
there's really not, as far as I know, there's no intention for that property at this time. The intention is simply to build the single family home. So it would just be left exactly as it is, and this small portion would be rezoned. For when it comes to the hookup to the municipal services, that would kick in when they come in and apply for their building and development permits. At that time, they would work with your development staff to put in those services, and it would be solely for the development that they're applying for.
May I? Caroline, so with a property like this where there hasn't been any other discussion around what the remaining lands look like, is this a normal practice that you see?
I would say that it isn't normal, depending, but for this particular situation, I think it makes a lot of sense based on your policies and council's goals for the future. The way that the piece that they're looking at is placed adjacent to another single residential property, it just fits in, and it leaves open a lot of potential for that R5 land, which is basically the intention of that zoning. Is that it's not serviced now, it's a huge piece of land, we want residential development to happen there, but we don't know what yet, so we're just going to keep that zoning there to that we maintain control, and then in the future, when somebody is interested in doing something, we'll be able to consider it further. So I do think it's a good practice in this particular situation.
Thank you.
All right, we do have a recommendation from our planner, and that recommendation is that we approve the proposal to rezone a portion of PID 5511299 from large lot R5 zone to single dwelling R1 zone. So the motion is that CAC recommend to the September 25th, 2023 council meeting approval of first reading of the proposal to rezone a portion of PID 55112999 from large lot R5 zone to single dwelling R1 zone. If someone could move that. Councillor Maxwell, thank you. Deputy Mayor, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that CAC recommend to the September 25th, 2023 council meeting approval of first reading of the proposal to rezone a portion of PID 55112999 from large lot R5 zone to single dwelling R1 zone. Is there any discussion on this matter? Are you ready for the question? The question is that CAC recommend to September 25th, 2023 council meeting approval of first reading of the proposal to rezone a portion of PID 55112999 from large lot R5 zone to single dwelling R1 zone. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed, and the motion is carried. Thank you. Thank you very much, Carolyn. I guess that's it for you tonight. Thank you so much for zooming in and for your work on behalf of the town of Kentville.
Thank you.
All right, moving right along, our next report is from Parks and Recreation, and we'll start with the director's report. Not that I'm rushing you or anything.
Pay no attention. Good evening, council. Good. You have my reports in front of you. Under the department report, just a few things. We've had 2 really busy months that I'm trying to cram into one report, so bear with me. I just want to highlight a few things. In response to the presentation that we just had from the Evangeline Club, our Spike Fund has received $3,706.21 in asks this year. It is important to note that when people do apply to us, if there's other funding available, then we try and connect them with that funding. The Elaine Arsenal Fund is one of those, and it is a really valuable fund for our communities as members as well. Our Housing and Community Partnership Coordinator, you'll be hearing that report later from CIO Troke, but Alicia Christie has accepted a term position with the town as the Housing and Community Partnership Coordinator. That's a really valuable position. Without that, we wouldn't be able to do half of the work that we're able to do on funding applications and support for the things that you'll see in the report. Our Neighborhood Outreach Program Coordinator, of which you approved in our operating budget, that application has gone out and we closed that on Wednesday. That position really has the purpose of illuminating a vision for a new kind of neighborhood. So when you had your public consultations around adding more development, one of the big concerns that we heard from community was that we're worried about expanding our community and losing the sense of community. And so this position directly goes to address those concerns so that we're able to kind of build more resiliency in our communities while also supporting the needs of our current community. Acting Director, starting September 25th, Craig Langell will be acting as the Recreation Director moving forward for the foreseeable future. And then training, I wanted to highlight 2 things, and that is that staff have been accepted to present at 2 different conferences to represent the town of Kentville. One is a provincial and one is a national conference. And both of those papers were accepted in this past year, so we're quite excited about that. Under facilities, the arena plant has turned on, though it's 31 degrees outside. The arena's nice and cool, and we will be getting ice in there, and we will open September 18th. Parks and trails, the majority of our parks and trails are open. We did receive some recent damage with the flooding. It is important to note that we have the majority of our staff are now in the arena, so we have limited staff, other than a few seasonal staff we've been able to snag to help us in the shoulder seasons. I also wanted to note that under parks and facilities is that Jerry, who you heard earlier was really into pumpkin people, and he's the one that developed all those fish. He's also the one that made the seahorse in front of Town Hall, and this is also his last year with the town of Kentville. So make sure you soak up those things as much as possible. I'm sure he'll be back to help us out with pumpkin people, but I just wanted to give a shout out to Jerry for all the work that he's done. The hemlock woolly adelgid is the gift that keeps on giving. It continues to spread. It's reached into Bedford now. Craig Langell has been working really hard with the community group, and they are coming up with a plan. You do have $40,000 in your capital budget this year that will be going towards address this, specifically in the gorge, while we continue to work on relationships with the agricultural center for the ravine. Tennis pickleball facility. This summer, lines were painted by the community to create six pickleball courts? Six pickleball courts. It's pumping down there. I don't know if you've ever been down there during the day. It's just pumping. There's a lot of dinking going on. It's crazy. Program and operations. Our summer was quite packed. I did want to showcase the work that our outreach program coordinators did. The staff was hired specifically to go out into community, to go into town, to go into parks, partner with a whole bunch of organizations, work with people who they found in those places, and they did just that. And we have a lot of amazing success stories, including people going to the pool for the first time, even though they've lived here for their entire lives. And we continue to do that work, and that is only something that we're going to continue and amplify in the coming years. Community outreach and events. It was mentioned earlier that we hosted the national cross-country and short track nationals here. When was that? July? That was a long time ago. It was great. We had way more entrants than we thought we would. We also had a lot more sponsorship than we thought we would. So all in all, it turned out to be a really fantastically successful event, which is setting up really well for next year when we do it all over again. Under capital projects, we had the dog park opening this summer that some of you attended, so thank you for that. Grandstands, we are looking to get, we're just waiting on some permits right now, but we're hoping to get that moving as soon as possible. And then under council-related, we have, and I'm sure you've seen him on social media, but we have an active transportation facilitator. So while Public Works is working really hard to build the environment to support active transportation, Joey is working really hard out there to ensure that people are educated and understand the rules of the road and how the multi-use trail works, working with kids to teach them how to bike, all of those great things, and put Kentville on the map. It is a bit of an innovative position. We're working with the province to continue it and to get funding for it because he's doing great work, and that's my report.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the director? Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you, Director. I just have one comment, and I don't want it to be taken as a criticism at all, because I think we're doing great work here with all our programming and everything. I did have a couple of people speak to me about the dog park and some noise with barking and things like that. And, you know, I think the dog park is fantastic, but I just thought I would bring this up. And I'm just wondering if there are some muffling types of things that we can do down there to kind of muffle that noise, if there's stuff you could put on the fencing, or maybe when the trees grow, that'll help, or anything like that that you know of.
We do have some tree planting happening this September, thanks to a grant that we received in our partnership with Tree Canada. That might help a little bit. We've also lessened the hours that the park is open, so it's open less hours than our other parks.
Okay.
Short of muzzling the dogs, I don't know what else to do.
We don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor York.
Thank you. Hi. I'm sure it's being addressed, and I'm sure it's because lots of things are sort of moving at the same time. But will there be communication about how the bike lane works with video instruction? Just, I've seen people using bits of the bike lane that aren't exactly the multi-use, like cyclists on the outside of the bollards instead of on the inside. So just making sure that the communication about how it's to be used can be put out widely.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and we receive those calls as well.
I'm sure.
So this is a top priority for Joey to work on right now.
Okay,
You'll
great.
see some temporary signage out there right now as we work to address that, and that's just to get us through the immediate future, but there will be some social media, some video, and some outreach education on that, and also permanent signage that will direct people down there. But you're right, it's a bit convoluted in the rollout. Part of that was timing of when people were able to do the job.
And I acknowledge that I have a lot of information about it, that most people might not have all of that information at the same time, so I acknowledge that.
I know
how
not
it
everybody
works,
goes on our website and sees all those things, yeah.
Great.
No, so Joey's, I appreciate that, because it is, I also agree, it is a concern. So it's top priority right now.
Cool, thank you.
Councillor Zabian.
Thank you. Just one quick question, Director. Are those bollards staying up all year round, or are they coming out in the winter? I get asked that every day, yeah.
They're coming down in the winter.
Okay, all right. And then will there be some kind of, there might be some people that bike in the winter, I don't know, but will there be some kind of painting or?
Right now, there won't be.
Okay.
But I think that is something to reassess as we move forward, because
Right.
as winter biking and also the lack of change in seasons comes into play, we may have to reassess that.
So it probably will reopen the traffic then, is that what you're, I guess it's, if it's open, right?
I'm gonna ask the
Yeah.
traffic authority.
Okay.
It'll still be one line painting, so.
Okay, okay,
It will still be one lane.
okay. Thank you.
Are there any further questions for the director? All right, you've got a couple of proposals for us.
I do. What was the first one? Deer Haven.
Deer Haven.
Perfect. Okay. So you have this recommendation in front of you. I am going to read it just to make sure that everyone knows what's been written here. The Deer Haven Parkland dedication is a 1.62 acre piece of land situated behind residential housing within the Deer Haven community. This green space was designed to act as a community connector between Fenway Court and Whitetail Court, and to act as a natural drainage way to support residential runoff. So in 2022, the Town of Kentville Parks and Recreation Department heard from some of the residents of Deer Haven community who desire to have the development of a trail between Fenway Court and Whitetail Court. and have the trail connect back to Deerhaven Drive as shown in Appendix A. So you can see the map. They're a really rough drawing of the land. It actually came up in the previous presentation. So in 2023-24 capital budget, the council approved $10,000 to go towards this project. So we currently have $10,000 available to us to develop a trail. So to gain a better understanding of the community's needs and concerns and desires, the Town of Kentville Parks and Recreation Department completed an engagement session in the Deerhaven subdivision on July 6th from 4:30 to 6 p.m. We had actually some of our summer outreach staff help us. Also, a community survey was created and posted on the Town of Kentville's website to allow residents to complete a short survey on the interest in a trail in the subdivision. This survey was open from July 6th to August 30th. So the town received a total of 34 responses to this survey. 26 of the 32 responses were from individuals living directly in the Deerhaven subdivision. 28 out of the 32 responses said they would use the trail for exercise, reconnect with nature, active transportation, walking their pets, and rehabilitation. The other 4 responses mentioned they would not use the space, and these 4 responses live in the Deerhaven subdivision. With regards to the question on how to create a more comfortable and welcoming space, we heard from participants about the need to level and even the space to walk, signage, benches, 4-foot wide trail with shaded areas. Concerns were raised that some residents do not want others accessing green space behind their property as it infringes on their privacy and that the trail will damage wildlife space. We also heard concern that the trail might be used for consuming liquor, drugs, and that garbage would begin to pile up in the area. Currently, there's no policy implications at the time. The budget I had mentioned before is $10,000 that we have pre-approved. We're hoping that that's enough to do what we're proposing. You can see the attachment of the map. So with all of this information, the recommendation that our department has moving forward is whereas the Deerhaven Green Space allotment is designated town land, and whereas the Town of Kentville is committed to connecting communities through active transportation and trail development, and whereas the original intent of this green space was to act as a community connector between Fenway Court and Whitetail Court, and to act as a natural drainage way to support residential runoff, I recommend that council approve the trail development between Fenway Court and Whitetail Court. And further, I recommend that council approve the mowing and maintenance of a footpath from Deerhaven Drive connecting to Fenway Court and Whitetail Court Trail.
Thank you very much, Director. So we have the recommendation, and from that, a motion that CAC recommend to the September 25th, 2023 council meeting approval of the plan for the Deerhaven green space, and further that council approve the mowing and maintenance of a footpath from Deerhaven Drive connecting the Fenway Court and Whitetail Court Trail. Councillor Maxwell, thank you for the motion. Deputy Mayor, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that CAC recommend to the September 25th, 2023 council meeting approval of the plan for the Deerhaven green space, and further that council approve the mowing and maintenance of a footpath from Deerhaven Drive connecting the Fenway Court and Whitetail Court Trail. Is there any discussion on this matter? Councillor Gerard.
Just a quick question. When you talk about the town's gonna mow and maintain a footpath, that seems like a large area. Is it the rest of it just gonna grow up? Or is there gonna be?
You mean, sorry, yes, just the footpath will be moved, yeah, yes. Yeah, and you can see the pinch point there, where we don't want to infringe on private property. That is, it doesn't allow for any larger trail. So our current standard of trail is about 3 meters. That doesn't exist there. So a footpath is really the only option in this area. Plus, we heard from residents that they want to keep as much natural as possible.
Okay.
So this is what we're recommending.
Thank you.
Is there anything further? Are you ready for the question? The question is that CAC recommend to the September 25th, 2023 council meeting approval of the plan for the Deerhaven green space, and further that council approve the mowing and maintenance of the footpath from Deerhaven Drive connecting the Fenway Court and Whitetail Court Trail. Voting is now open.
This TV doesn't work, that's what she's saying.
Voting is now closed, and the motion is carried. Thank you very much. All right, Director, you have another one for us on the tennis facility recommendation.
I do, and I lost my tennis people. They got tired, but I said that I would email them. It's not that they weren't here. They're quite passionate. In 2023, a community group focused on getting a covered structure to support the growing number of tennis and pickleball players in the town of Kentville and the Kings County region. The group presented to council in June of 23, Council Advisory Committee. Staff advised that we would continue working with the group and bring more information back to council, as well as continue to investigate the current facility needs of our community. So the Kings County Tennis Association has been working with Tennis Canada and Tennis Nova Scotia to find a place for a racket facility. Tennis Canada, through its municipal tennis strategy and partnership framework, which that really lengthy 100+ page document, that's what that is, just in case you haven't had a chance to read all 150 of those pages. But they have put out a really good document around Tennis Canada partnering with municipal government. So in your spare time, if you wanted to read it, it's quite great. They also have a partnership framework, so investing in select municipalities across Canada to grow the sport of tennis. I should note that pickleball has come on board here, so it's actually growing the sport of tennis and pickleball. The town of Kentville is a community of interest, so out of nationwide search, there are 8 places that they're looking. The town of Kentville is one of those. And a commitment to the project is required for the organizing committee to move forward with the bidding process. The Parks and Recreation Department is currently involved in a process to better understand the state of investment needed for our current facilities, as well as future facility needs. This study will be completed in the 23-24 fiscal cycle, and the information will be shared to council to support future budgetary needs. So what you can see in their package on the back, I just want to give you a little bit of explanation. So they have a request to council. This is the document. Not the 100+ page one. This one was just a joyful 7 pages. Request to council. So they had a few requests here. After speaking with them, what we talked about was that in order to move forward, to be able to attract any future sponsorship or grants, they just need a commitment of council that we're interested in this. So, with that being said, my recommendation is whereas Tennis Canada, Rogers Canada require confirmation of site selection by 2024, and whereas in order for the Kings County Tennis Association to apply to other sources of funding, a location must be identified. I'm recommending the following: that council approve in principle the requested lot at 125 Park Street for future construction of a tennis and pickleball facility, and further that staff continue to work with the Kings County Tennis Association to support their efforts in bringing an indoor tennis and pickleball facility to Kentville.
Thank you very much for that recommendation, Director. And if we turn it into a motion, that CAC recommend to the September 25th, 2023 council meeting approval in principle of the requested lot at 125 Park Street for the future construction of a tennis pickleball facility. And further, that staff continue to work with the Kings County Tennis Association to support their efforts in bringing an indoor tennis and pickleball facility to Kentville. Councillor Zabian, thank you. Councillor York for the second. It has been moved and seconded that CAC recommend to the September 25th, 2023 council meeting approval in principle of the requested lot at 125 Park Street for the future construction of a tennis pickleball facility, and further that staff continue to work with the Kings County Tennis Association to support their efforts in bringing an indoor tennis and pickleball facility to Kentville. Is there any discussion on this matter? Are you ready for the question? The question is that CAC recommend to the September 25th, 2023 council meeting approval in principle of the requested lot at 125 Park Street for the future construction of a tennis pickleball facility, and further that staff continue to work with the Kings County Tennis Association to support their efforts in bringing an indoor tennis and pickleball facility to Kentville. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed, and the motion is carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Director.
Thank you very much.
All right, Deputy Chief.
Acting Chief.
Acting. Acting Chief, sorry.
Good evening, Council, Mayor Snow and CAO Troke. Tonight, you should have before you our Police Commission report. I'd like you to keep in mind that we haven't had a meeting since July, and we're our next meeting's in 2 weeks, which would present on August. So we're a little bit behind, but just a touch, I just want to do a little touch on our July report, which actually hasn't been, it's been given to the board, but it actually wasn't, we haven't had our meeting on it. So just something to take notice of is our call volume has actually increased a fair bit in July from June. And our tickets have increased a lot over the last month, which is nice to see that the members are out being active. July is a busy month for vacation, as you know, so we didn't have many training hours. I don't think we had any actually, so, which is down a fair bit from our usual. We were quite busy. We've had some changes in our office in the last 2 to 3 months. We've had a few members leave, and then we've had the chief retire. So I've been given the opportunity, and thank you very much, CAO Trope, for having the confidence in me to do it as acting chief until a new chief is appointed. And of course, we wish Jim Butler nothing but the best. Thanks for those that showed up at the farewell lunch that we had, which was well attended. We hired 2 new members, which I'm sure you've seen around town, 2 new faces that you haven't seen before. Constable Eric McDonald comes to us from Saskatchewan with 13 years police service, and Constable Ben Fleckenstein, who just graduated from the Atlantic Police Academy. I'd like to mention as well that next, actually Wednesday, is the start of the Nova Scotia Chiefs Conference, and 2 of the board members will be joining us there, Councillor Chair York and Co-Chair Virginia Brook will be attending. So other than that, our budget is on track. We had a rough July, and we've had a rougher August with obviously shortages and backfilling, but we're overall in good standing. That's everything.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Acting Chief. I actually had that written in my notes.
It's okay.
Acting Chief.
It's fine.
And questions? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Acting Chief. So try and ask this in as easy way as I can. So I've had different residents around town approach me with respect to seeing more marginalized persons in the community and having more of a feeling of unsafety. And whether that's actually true or not true, I don't know to be the case. But when those sorts of things are expressed to me, then I like to bring it forward at a meeting of this nature and just put it out there just to get a sense of how you're feeling about things and overall how people should feel about things. I don't know that I've worded that correctly,
I
but
think I think I know what you're referring to.
you.
Sure. It's one of those things where it's perceived, I guess, that way in a sense, but from call volumes that we deal with on a day-to-day basis, it hasn't increased based on those that we've seen. Obviously, you see more people around the town and stuff like. There's absolutely that, but as far as the call volume goes in relation to those, it hasn't changed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's good information. Thank you.
Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you. I think I'm going to ask the CAO this question. Do we have an update on the hiring of the chief or the status of that at the moment?
So thank you. The job ad is out there. We're receiving applications. The applications, I believe, close on the 15th, at which point in time those individuals that have applied The applications are screened, and then there's a discussion with the board about process for proceeding. So I would anticipate if as quick as possible right after the 15th, and it's probably only going to take a day or two to compile the information, supply it to the chair of the board, and then they'll convey a meeting in order to proceed.
Thank you very much.
It won't go off. Sweaty fingers.
I think it's stuck.
Okay. You have the con there, Councillor Maxwell.
I have the what?
You're on live mic from now on. We can't shut your mic off.
I'll be careful what I say.
Can you try shutting it off from your button?
There you go.
No, it's still on. Is it?
I think it's trying to reconnect. It's okay.
Okay, good. Thank you. So your mic is shut off. All right, Acting Chief, I think that's everything for this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And next up is Director Bell from the Department of Engineering and Public Works.
Thank you, Mayor Snow, and good evening. I'll start my report, as I usually do, with an update on the Water Commission. Operationally this summer, there were no issues with the Water Commission. We've had a few minor service leaks and minor water main breaks, but overall, everything is working as expected. And similarly with the sanitary sewer area service, there were no operational issues with the service other than, again, a few lateral upgrades and repairs. Under Public Works, an update on Canaan Avenue. We expect work to begin this month on the retaining wall installation and guardrail and sidewalk replacement along the slope failure section of Canaan Avenue. Once this work is complete, the road can be reopened later this fall. Under Traffic Authority, the province has erected 2 new lights at either end of the new bridge. As of the writing of this report, we are still waiting on Nova Scotia Power to energize these new lights. But other than that, they are ready to go into operation once the last connection is made to power. Under projects, work is nearly complete on the curb and sidewalk improvements, as Director Bedingfield
Going through.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You're back on.
Great.
Thank you.
Work is nearly complete on the curb and sidewalk improvements and replacements around town, particularly on the downtown AT connector. Approximately 75% of the pipe work is now complete on the second phase of the McDonald Avenue subdivision rebuild. This is phase 2, with curbing and paving scheduled for later this fall. The second phase of the active transportation network project, which includes downtown curb and sidewalk replacement, as well as a section of sidewalk along the north side of Main Street between Leverett and Cornwallis Streets, came in on budget and has been awarded to Dexter Construction. And work just began today, in fact, on the Main Street section between Leverett and the corner of Cornwallis. And the recent council-approved extra work on Elm Street for road repairs and the North Cornwallis Street sidewalk replacement have recently been completed. Those are the highlights of my report, and ready for questions.
All right, thank you very much, Director. Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you, Director. I'm wondering if we are still painting crosswalks, if that's an ongoing thing or...
Absolutely. Typically, they're done earlier in the season, and you may see a slight difference maybe from the past practice. Crosswalks we consider to be across the street where there isn't always a push button, but they would stop traffic to cross the street. That's where we do the tiger stripe crossing, when you're at the end of an intersection of a road where say, Glenview meets Park Street. We just have two parallel bars, and that's for two reasons. We find the certainly runners and bicyclists that go through that area found the tiger striping slippery, and the parallel bars are quicker to paint, and everyone, of course, has to stop at a stop bar anyway at the bottom of an intersection. That perhaps wasn't your question, but
No,
we do try to refresh them all, early in the season, and then look at them again late in the fall in areas that do wear, especially around school zones and in that area. So we do try to keep them all painted. I've noticed a few on my travels that may have been missed this year in certain side roads, but the bulk of them are done. Certainly, if you see any that you notice, let me know, and we will address them.
I had a few residents on Chester Avenue concerned. I think those crosswalks are near
There's two
school bus pickups,
Okay,
and the crosswalks aren't very visible, so.
on Chester.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And this question, I think I'm going to go to the CAO on. I had emailed you earlier about the flood on Condon, and I had said that I thought that we had fixed that problem after the last big rainfall. And I'm wondering if you could just explain maybe to the public what you sort of said to me, what happened in that situation, because I think we were all under the impression that it was kind of a fixed thing, and so I would just wonder if you could address that a little bit.
Absolutely, and maybe I'll start, and Director Bell can help should I miss anything. So the rain which we had was an extensive amount of rain in a very short period of time. And so the reality of it is, if you get 50 millimeters or whatever it is in about a half an hour time period, one, it can easily overwhelm any system you have. It doesn't matter on what level you're designing it to. But two, the other piece you have here in the valley is you have runoff from a hill with rain coming down at the same time. And so you have debris and whatnot also being pulled, and in some cases starting to fill up catch basins, starting to fill up culverts, and so on. So your rain coming down and the rain coming off of the hill with speed is causing various points to get a massive amount of water that overwhelms whatever system you have. I think one of the biggest pieces in this particular case, and again, I'll look to Director Bell, but there was an awful lot of sediment in the water. And so therefore you had, whether it was dirt, whether it was leaves, whether it was branches, and because the rain came down so hard, it picked a lot of things up and moved them around. So in fact, we actually had places where water didn't just pick up manhole covers, but it threw them. And so the force behind this was quite extensive. And again, the system is designed to manage heavy amounts of rain. We just saw a heavy amount of rain, literally, that you might see in a storm in an entire day in about a half an hour time period. But I think I'll get David Bell to maybe speak a little better than me on that.
You touched on most of the highlights, CAO Croak. We were, most of the culverts were either handling or doing what they're supposed to do, backing up slightly with the rain event, but it was toward the end of the major rains that we saw the enormous amount of almost like a pit run gravel come down from anywhere I would estimate from, even half a kilometer or more away from certain places like Condon and other hillside runoff areas that direct that water to the Cornwallis River directly, really. It was at the end of the rain event when that finally traveled several thousand feet, even I guess perhaps a kilometer, and filled those channels with debris. We took out several truckloads out of several areas that it wouldn't have mattered on the size of the pipe. It was a full channel of gravel and not as much debris, but just almost pure gravel. It didn't come from nearby, behind those areas. It came from a great distance, and at the tail end of the rain event. During most of the rain event, I didn't see a lot of issues around. I mean, certainly there were washouts. that you'd expect from that type of rain event, but it was the gravelly debris. That, that's something we want to address with the construction of the Hills Road. We're to build stormwater management areas up in those higher elevations. A lot of that's where that material is originating, and that's the native gravelly material that's up there that just travels down the channel and ends up once it hits one of the pipe systems. Again, the size wouldn't matter. The pipe, the pipe on Condon is 30 inches in diameter, and the channel had 5 feet of gravel in it. It was just unbelievably full. The only real solution is to work upstream where we're going to be building this connector road over the next 3 years, and build stormwater management areas to help control the intensity of the rain, but also the sedimentation runoff that comes from those side hills. That we can remove that as it builds up. We can remove that before it gets into the channels. It isn't a magic solution, but it is the one that I think is the right solution for Kentville as we build that infrastructure on the Hills Road.
Thank you very much to both.
Thank you.
Councillor Sabia.
Thank you. Director, just a quick question on the sidewalk replacements downtown on the inner block. I think that's slated for next. Was that awarded to Dexter's too, or that tender hasn't closed yet?
That's the one that I mentioned in my report, Councillor, that closed the end of July, awarded in early August, and they, as part of that contract, is also the section that they started on today in front of Main Street Station.
Okay.
So there's some removals. We added that on at Council's request to replace that section of sidewalk from Leverett to sort of around the corner to where the crosswalk is in front of the old inn. They decided to start on that part of the project first. It sort of gets them on site with a smaller crew and get working on that while they prepare, and we can notify the business community on the section to come. The next section to come, in my assumption, is that they would work probably on Cornwallis Street, sort of on the corner by the MLA office, and work in a counterclockwise fashion around the square from Cornwallis to Webster to Aberdeen. It is the 11th of September already, so they're going to not remove everything at once. They'll work in a section by section method, base things on weather events, rain or early snow or that sort of thing, so we don't remove too much too soon, with the possibility of extending that into a early spring completion to do next year. But they want to do as much as they can under this fall phase of the contract.
You answered my question. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through the chair to Director Bell. So Councillor Maxwell asked the question about Condon, and so it's good to hear that the system is working, and that it is not, we had heavy rain, and that it's not necessarily the infrastructure that isn't working, but more so around the hillside runoff, and you alluded to some work upstream and sedimentation runoff. So I guess what I would like a little bit more information on, and it doesn't necessarily have to be tonight, but maybe certainly if it's the will of council, that as we move forward, it's something that we could investigate further. And I understand that with the Hills Road construction and stormwater management, that it will look after some of those things. But that's over a 1 to 3 year period, and as we heard tonight with the archaeological, survey that has to be done, there's some delays on that. Excuse me. So I'm wondering, what are some of the options that we could put in place to prevent that from happening on a go-forward basis? I think I understand that it was primarily Condon that it was affected from the hillside runoff, and that it was sediment and debris and so on and so forth. Is there something that could be brought back to council that could, a stop measure on that between now and when the Hills connector is complete. Thank you.
Sure. It certainly wasn't just Condon. There were several areas up in Palmer subdivision and across from KCA. Any of the main feeders that come down sort of from that area of south, the area the north of the future connector that where a lot of that runoff comes from. But it starts, in and around the gorge, runs through Palmer and Glenwood subdivisions, and part of it ends up down Condon Way as it splits off. Part ends up into the KCA sort of storm system that goes north. There's a part between Gladys Porter and the gorge that goes into the ravine there. Those all saw huge amounts of sediment that we're still dealing with. We're in places they're hard to get at. We had contractors in all of last week looking at, just trying to clean the systems out because, no matter what we get, we know we get rain, whether it's a rain event like that or anything that is brewing. We know we're watching hurricanes now, of course, and that's a concern. What could be done, we found in the last 3 or 4 years, since Condon's been done, and I guess B, since some of the other upgrades near KCA have been done, that there hasn't been any real issues, but that's not to say with another large event that we could see what happened a week and a half ago happen again. It's difficult to prevent such things, but we're looking at making sure that we have sandbags available to residents that want to protect the front of their property, from the flooding or debris sedimentation that will flow onto their property. But to do changes to infrastructure isn't something that's going to happen anytime soon. It's the long-term plan again is the Hills Road, but as you suggested, there's some things we could go back and look at and see. But right now, that's the long-term plan for this issue.
Thank you for that. So in you saying that there potentially are some things that your office could look at, and I know I'm only one person on council, but I'd like to see that happen. And I don't know what that looks like or sounds like, but
you just can't. We prepare for every storm, of course, and make sure grates are clear. We were at all the we call them problem spots leading up to even no one could have predicted the amount of rain that came down in August, but at the end of August storm. But making sure that for the next one things are clear as well. But when you get that much rain in that short a time, there really isn't anything that you can do to a system other than try to maintain it during the event and making sure it's clear prior to the event.
So with sandbags and barriers and things like that, might that help somewhat?
That'll help protect private property. It's not something that's going to, you'll still see, if you get that kind of event, you'll still see debris and sedimentation on our roads that we have to, spend hundreds of staff hours after the fact cleaning up. There's no doubt about that. And like I said, we're still cleaning up pipes and between our own staff and private contractors to get that infrastructure clear of the debris that was left behind from the last storm. But making sure they're in working condition is the key of preparedness.
Okay.
Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Worship. I'm just wondering, is there anything in the works for extending the pipe from Condon across to when it comes down Condon, it's 36 inches.
Correct.
I've been told it's 18 inches it goes into. It looks smaller than that because it looks like it's about a third of the size. That, surely to God, has something to do with big debris coming in and bottlenecking at a much smaller pipe?
We've talked about it, Counselor. That's not, in my feeling, that's not what caused the issue 2 weeks ago. It wouldn't have mattered if it was, to me, if it was piped all the way. With that amount of debris, it filled the upper pipe before it did anything to anything downstream. We've seen, certainly large events in the last 4 years that haven't been an issue in that piping along Park Street. I think it's certainly a long-term plan to replace that, because as it goes now, it travels across behind the curb through lawns from Condon heading east through 4 properties, and then ultimately across the road to past the basketball courts and to the ditch along the south side of the trail. I don't think the path is the wrong path. Just would sooner see it out in the street and upgraded to a larger size, and I see that happening in the future, but don't see that would have made a bit of difference from the end of August storm.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, the smaller pipe filled up first, because I think I even sent you a picture. Because it was this high out of the grate coming from the top of the street.
It was boiling out of the grate at the bottom of Condon by West Park. That is correct. So that leads me to believe it was full of debris. There's no question.
But not the big pipe. The big pipe was still.
It was slowly filling up all the way up. Yeah, absolutely. But I'm not sure that's a size issue. I would say that the capacity to hold the water, as much water that would come down, it would have taken. It was once that's full of gravel, it wouldn't have mattered if you could have walked through that pipe. I think we would have seen that full of enough stone and rock and debris and silt and sand to not make a difference. It needs to be controlled to keep that debris from entering the system. That's the key.
No, absolutely no disrespect to Dave, but since it's been an issue several times, is it something that we could get an independent company to come in and go, this is how you remedy it? And again, no
Absolutely.
Disrespect to you.
I guess, the piece that I'm hearing here is our professional engineer is saying that the issue here is not about the size of the pipe. I think the remedy to this is really up the top of the hill. And so we've got a multi-year process in order to get to that. But the other piece, I guess, is what I'm also hearing is that, in the short term, if we had a major event, there are things like sandbags and whatnot could be put in place where areas might be affected. Really the solution, and I suspect based upon the comments that have been made here by Director Bell, is the solution really is going to be the work at the Donald Hills.
And there's no question when we replace that pipe, and all pipe has a finite life, it would be installed with a different material and no doubt a different size.
Okay. Thank you.
And a different location that's more serviceable and not on, not running through easements on private properties.
Yeah. Thank you.
Councillor York.
Thank you. Recognizing that obviously the big fix is 1 to 3 years out, if residents were looking to get some sort of barrier, because we know these 1 in 100 year storms are happening 1 in 3 weeks now, and there are some that come with some degree of predictability, like this weekend, and others that overwhelm us as much as they overwhelm our infrastructure. Is there an opportunity for us to have a supply giveaway of sorts where we have sandbags? And forgive me, I thankfully have not needed a sandbag. They come filled with sand so that residents don't have to source their own sand in a moment of need. Are we able to offer something like that for that interim Band-Aid fix?
I believe we have both. We have the opportunity for residents to pick up already filled sandbags, and we have sandbags that if that's the desire to be filled just for ease of lugging and filled on site. We also have sand available at the behind the shop at Public Works. But I will check on the certainly the supply of our bags. I know we try to keep a good supply. For a while there, we actually were, I think, providing EMO with some extra ones because they were short. That's going back a year or more ago. But I'll confirm certainly that we we try to keep an ample supply. But ample is when everyone starts coming, we could certainly see that depleted in a hurry. But,
Yeah. I appreciate that, supply is rather limited, but perhaps there could be a budget implication on our end to allow for some of those remedial costs. All right, thank you. And sorry, as a follow-up, how would someone call to get one, or the best way to go about getting one?
It's Public Works is typically someone is on staff there. Usually it's our shop steward or our mechanic there most of the time. But if not, then by calling the main desk here at 679-2500, we will make arrangements for someone to to meet a citizen at Public Works so they could get those bags.
And Public Works, the
875 West Main Street,
Okay.
Down across from sort of the skate park or the hub.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Theo, did you want to add something?
Sure, I was just going to say that I guess, I would add to that these sandbags are really intended for when there's an emergency need for them. And that we certainly are not, and not just from a budgetary consideration, but purely from a supply and demand perspective, there would need to be a look by our Public Works team as to putting those sandbags out. And so understanding that there would be a potential that, and Director Bell mentioned, a real pinch point, that these would have to be something that we'd want to make sure that were actually going to be of use in a given circumstance. The other piece, obviously, is any homeowner, if there are things, particularly with perhaps water flowing from one person's property to another, we always encourage folks to take a look or work with companies around making sure they do everything they can to prepare their own properties around storm. I know certainly our Ramo, Dan Stovall, sends me lots of messages, but I also think that folks need to take that really good look around their property. And if they believe that they've got a low spot or drainage towards their house, there are some things that obviously we would recommend them to do on their own, because in that situation, and I think it's been mentioned, sandbags alone won't hold back if you have a lot of water happening.
Councillor Huntley.
Hi, Dave.
Hi, Councillor.
The new lights that were added to the bridge, there's 2 now. Is there only going to be 2?
That's correct.
Okay.
One on either end, both on the east side of the bridge.
And they look good, yeah. Second question, I saw some trucks around this week, and it looked like one was at the bottom of Condon where the apartment building is, and it looked like it was putting down a big hose down through the ground. Did that have a camera in it, or what was it doing? I noticed it was in a few spots close to Memorial Park. Yeah.
If you saw a big hose, that would be a flusher type Vector truck.
Oh, that's it.
We were we're doing a smaller trailer vehicle by Loomers would have had a camera to show us the inside of the pipe. But probably if you saw a large hose, it was a jet or a vac flushing up and sucking back on those areas that had been partially filled with this large amount of debris, gravel, rock, and silt. Yeah.
Okay. And last question. I know through all this water and flooding, I can try and imagine how many times your phone rang or how many emails you've gotten. And I know I myself have gotten a lot of emails, but of course I am not educated by no means like you are. But the one thing I'm wondering is communication seems to be the biggest piece that came out of a lot of the emails that I received. And I'm wondering if it's feasible, it won't work, I'm not sure, but some sort of communication hotline that can be updated to give residents a little bit of information, because I would love to be able to help them, but I can't. So I hate for them to not know something,
Mm.
and that can get frustrating as well.
Absolutely. I mean, we have a great comms team here. We call it, it's our storm team, but it's not
No.
not related to the storm. It has a different acronym meaning. You know, with the event at the end of August, it was such a almost really an unpredicted. We knew we were getting rain, but it wasn't like a hurricane where you watch it come up the coast for 6 days. It was here. I was shocked at the intensity. You know, from 8:30 till 10, and it was gone. And you know, we were in the cleanup and aftermath mode, and like so many residents had to do themselves. But certainly we can make sure our comms team, you know, posts updates. Certainly, especially for things like our own, well, a hurricane. I think it's best to watch the hurricane watch and you know your local weather, rather than something that might be old news on a social media page run by the town, because we don't like to put those kind of alerts on our social media, because we're not live like so many news outlets are. But anything to do with public works or cleanup or that sorts of things, we would do through our comms team.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Director Bell. Again, I don't think that the last comment I said thank you, so I apologize for that.
No problem.
So just to sort of end it for me, I just want to confirm that that Public Works will obviously try and manage those pain point areas where we know that they are, you know, certainly to the best of their ability, whether it means sandbags, or to Councillor York's point, or barricades, or what have you. I know we can only do so much, but.
Right. We won't be putting out a lot of sandbags ourselves. That's not, we're trying to maintain the inlets,
Yes.
Pre-storm events, to make sure that all of our known spots are as clear as we can possibly get them prior to an event. Anything that, you know, we're trying to keep, if you're trying to keep stormwater out of your own property, whether it's you're coming up a driveway, usually those are often the case where if the street's curbed but your driveway is open for 20 feet or 100 feet, and that's where storm the debris is entering, then that's what needs to be barriered off. But Public Works cannot do that portion of it. No. That's private property.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anything further for the director? All right, Dave, thank you very much.
Thank you.
CAO?
Thank you, and before I start, I do want to thank Director Bell and the last 2 weeks, and I think folks realize that his phone was, at any given time, he'd probably have 100 messages on there every day trying to keep up with it, and I know he was still out going to homeowners and various points today, so I just want to say my own personal thanks to Director Bell for his efforts in the last 2 weeks. For me, starting off with, wanted to let council know that discussions with Pace Atlantic and Kentville Switch, we received a draft agreement from Pace Atlantic that Director Matthews and myself went through, and we've been back and forth with Pace. There's still work to be done on that arrangement, and then once we're satisfied with the initial language, it'll be going to the town solicitor for review, so there's still some back and forth on that before we're going to be bringing that back to council. Joint Regional Transportation Agency, Director Bell is now attending as the CAO's alternate. I know there was a meeting in person last week on that, but as the work begins to commence on that, I'm sure there's more information coming back to council. Regional Sewer, there were meetings around a sewer contract with regards to desludging, so this is a major contract for the lagoon system itself. Sewer budget coming to CAC tonight. QP 4403, so this is our Recreation Public Works staff. A 4-year contract was just signed with the membership. And Housing Accelerator Fund, the application deadline was extended. However, I'm happy to say the town of Kentville does have their application in. Service exchange, there's a series of consultations that were taking place between the province and municipal units. There's lots more to come on this, but essentially this is the funding that municipalities begin providing to the province around justice, housing, and roads, mostly with regards to handover agreements that took place in the 90s. And with regards to the CAO transition, there's been meetings with directors with the acting CAO to make sure that all of the information and files that are underway, there's a number of requests for decision that council brought forward. Those are going to be, they're with staff and they're going to be coming forward, likely many of them in October. But we wanted to make sure that all those files continued to move along. I'll stop there before we stop on our housing and homelessness conversation.
Excellent. Thank you very much, CAO. Are there any questions for the CAO? They're letting you off easy tonight. Now you're on to your housing and community partnerships, please.
Correct, thank you. So just want to let folks know you have a new report in your package. Alicia Christie is the Housing and Community Partnerships Coordinator. So you heard Director Bedingfield talk about this as a new term position. So for those of you who have met Alicia before, she did a lot of work with the housing and homelessness count with Acadia. She's been doing some work with the portal. And so very connected with the community and connected with the issue of housing and homelessness. The intention behind this work is that, and I know there's been some discussion here tonight, every community is experiencing more and more individuals who are not just struggling with a place to live, but are finding themselves everything from camping to working with nonprofit organizations and so on. And so for the last 2 years, we've been having conversations with the nonprofit organizations around a Kentville Housing Action Plan. And so we're very well positioned as a community as we start not just the Accelerator Fund, but some of the other opportunities that are coming both from the province. And a lot of this has to do with municipal units who can talk on behalf of the global nonprofit community that can do work in a given area. So nowhere in this is the town of Kentville looking and saying, we're going to get into the operations side of this. The folks who are excellent at providing support, excellent at providing emergency shelter, they're still doing their work. But there's opportunities for us to be advocating, be seeking out sources of funding, and basically through the evidence that we have, be able to support various grants and applications for the region. And one of the big things in these conversations is that outside of HRM and CBRM, many communities, are not at that point where they can not just quantify, but they're also in that position where they say, we have partners who can do this, this, and this. And so, when you're at the table or you're in that call, and the province says, can anybody speak on behalf of what your community can do? Kentville is incredibly well positioned to speak to what the community can do and how we can start addressing the real big challenges that are there. So just to give you an example, so the Community Cooling Center, you saw that we had openings over the last number of weeks. Also, one of the things is that there has been a call essentially for work with the Affordable Housing Association of Nova Scotia. So Kentville, we put forward a letter of interest. What that means is when they are ready to do their call for proposals, we can speak to what we see in Kentville. We can speak for our partners, and the partners can also talk about how they're working with the municipal unit to try and do the things that they're doing. The Accelerator Fund, the application has been submitted, but one of the things behind this is that Alicia has been taking not just the data that we have, the data that's available in various sources, and basically validating that with some of our partners around, is this making sense? If we talk about doing this, do you have the capacity to do it? And then what would it take to do it? So it's that kind of full 180 on what we can do and the 180 on what the community can do to look at that 360 perspective on where we want to go. So this is the first of some reports that are going to come through. And I think that it was important, at least as the CAO, to talk to the importance of this work, but more importantly, the incredible strength in our community that if we can support them through grant writing, through speaking on behalf of what they're doing with the federal and provincial governments, I really believe that Kentville's in a place where you can really take advantage of this funding and really tackle the issues that are in front of you. And, we all see it. We all know the numbers are growing. And not just from a perspective of who's showing up in Kentville, we're seeing more and more individuals who right now are kind of falling in and out of systems. And so this is about really taking that multi-year approach to how we're going to look at supporting those individuals. So this is kind of the first of what will be a regular report coming your way. Happy to chat on anything that's in there.
Thank you, CAO. Councillor Zabian.
Thank you, Mayor Snow. Through the chair, and I apologize, I should have asked this a moment ago. CAO, just, it's my understanding that the repairs, or nobody's been over to the Heritage Center, the old Via Rail building, sorry, that is town-owned. And I'm just wondering, and I'm gonna ask council, if it would be appropriate just to throw a motion on the floor now to direct to have these repairs done and looked after finally, because I know I've asked in 2021, 2022, and 2023, could we just get something, a motion now and have them done? That was what I'd like to see that happen, thank you.
Before the CAO responds, a motion would be inappropriate because that's an operational matter and council does not direct operations. So CAO?
Sure, thank you. And I guess, you know, basically one of the things that, so the roof was done last year. There's a list of items that are there that we are aware of, but really the priorities of the last number of weeks are really what, you know, has taken precedent with regards to our Public Works team. That has to come first. As soon as we have a moment to be able to go over and do another review and try and get something out on the street to look for quotes, it will happen kind of as those other priorities kind of get knocked off.
No, and I appreciate that, but I mean, these were asked for way before any of the last recent events. This has been like a couple of years now. It just seems like we have the discussion about it, and most of us here have said, I think we've all brought it at one point or another, or some of us have, I know, and we'd like to see them complete, and then it just seems to be a conversation, and I haven't seen any action from it. So I don't know if you know, Mayor Snow, I apologize if a motion's not appropriate, but I'd like to see that taken care of myself anyway. I don't know about the rest of you, but we own the building, and I think we should maintain it, and these guys are in there volunteering their time. You know, they contribute a lot to our town, and I mean, we're taking care of our own assets, so.
Thank you. Did you wish?
Anything on housing?
No. Anything on housing? All right, you have another report.
Yes, thank you. So this is the Mentoring Plus quarterly report. Received this late, but I do believe they're continuing to touch on their relationship, not just with the high schools, but also continuing to talk about things such as financial literacy, connecting the youth with various organizations, particularly even in the nonprofit world. And if there are any questions, be happy to attempt to answer, or I could bring them back to Mentoring Plus for some further comment.
All right, thank you, CAO. Is there any questions with regards to Mentoring Plus? All right, moving on to our unfinished business. CAO, back on to you.
Thank you. So for sometimes folks are aware that Kirsten Duncan has been acting as our development officer. What I'm bringing forward to council tonight is that where Kirsten has been an assistant development officer with the town since 2014, been acting in the role since October of 22. According to the Municipal Government Act, the council shall appoint a development officer to administer its land use bylaw and municipal planning strategy. So tonight I'm bringing forward and asking that council approve the appointment of Kirsten Duncan as the development officer for the town of Kentville.
CAO, thank you for that recommendation, and the motion would read that CAC recommend to council approval of the appointment of Kirsten Duncan as the development officer. If someone could move that, please. Councillor York, thank you, and Councillor Zabian for the second, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that CAC recommend to council approval of the appointment of Kirsten Duncan as the development officer. Is there any discussion on this matter? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through the chair, CEO Troke, does a bylaw have to be created around this, or where it's under the MGA that looks after that piece of it?
Go ahead, CEO.
Sure. So essentially, it's sometimes what will happen is you will combine it into various roles depending on how your town is structured.
Okay.
So in this case here, what we're doing is we have the authority under the MGA to appoint a very specific development officer.
Okay.
So in this case here, we're obviously still moving ahead with the recruitment of our planner.
Yes.
But in this case, Kirsten's done an amazing job, and I think that we should put some permanency to this as a designation.
Yeah, absolutely. Just wanted clarity around that. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on the matter? Are you ready for the question? The question is that CAC recommend to council approval of the appointment of Kirsten Duncan as the development officer. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed, and the motion is carried. Thank you very much.
So the next item, so this is the appointment of a treasurer, and so this is actually an item that doesn't need council's approval. In fact, the way in which the Municipal Government Act reads is that basically by default, the CAO is the treasurer, but the CAO can appoint an individual who would be the treasurer. And so in this case here, I wanted to make sure that council was informed that in this case, our Director of Finance, Director Matthews, is going to be the treasurer. So many documents that come through that the town needs to sign off on, it's typically the CAO and the treasurer would sign. And also for audit purposes, it's good to have those double signatures. So this is basically an opportunity. I wanted to make sure that council was aware that the treasurer for the town of Kentville, we were going to be putting Director Matthews as having that title.
Thank you very much, CAO. So we've been here for 3 hours. I would like to recommend a break for council, recharge your water and biological break. So it is currently 8:55. So if you could be back here at 9 p.m. to restart. Thank you.
Thank you.
You ready? All right, we will reconvene, and we'll start with the sanitary sewer area service capital budget.
Sure thing. Thanks. Good evening again. I've asked Director Matthews to join me this evening, as she certainly had lots of input and help in preparing this report. So I'll start off, I guess, as I've done in previous years. It's a little late in the fiscal year to be. If you hear the alarm, I may get Kirsten to think she's still out there for me. The building auto arms at 9, and we're just I stopped 4 of the 5. I think there's maybe one more, but I think we're okay. Put your coat in. Thanks. Over by the bathroom. Sorry about that, everybody. We'll start tonight with the sanitary sewer area service operating budget for the 23-24 fiscal year. I've got a summary here, and I won't go through it line by line, but our revenues for 23-24 are $1,490,900, and this is a total revenue increase of $133,700, but includes a $98,700 transfer from operating reserves to balance the budget. So in line with that, our expenditures are that same amount, $1.4990 million. So overall expenditures increased $137,100, or roughly 10% over last year. Some of those increases are due to administration costs, although that sector decreased by $55,000 over last year. This is mostly attributed to a $67,600 decrease in the transfer to the depreciation reserve from last year to help balance the budget. Under domestic sewer maintenance, that segment has increased $9,700 due to increases in wages and benefits and recent actual costs of sewer repairs, mostly in the town-owned portion of aging sewer laterals. Pumping stations, that segment has increased slightly, $9,700, due to insurance and premium increases, and operations due to power rates and radio license fees. Rachel's gonna get that. Under treatment and disposal, this section has increased from last year by $147,800, or almost 17%. This section records our share of the jointly funded sewer treatment plant and transmission lines owned by the municipality of the County of Kings, and includes a large portion of that is a $136,000 10-year debenture for ongoing upgrades to the regional wastewater treatment plant. Under fiscal services, this sector increased roughly $32,000. This is primarily due to increased principal and interest charges on long-term debt repayment. So we have a section titled this year, Transfers to Depreciation Reserve. So the fund this year has proposed the sanitary sewer capital projects. The depreciation reserve will be fully depleted at the end of the 23-24 fiscal year. So with a proposed 20% rate increase in 24-25, this is still subject to a internal rate review. The depreciation reserve will be replenished, transferring $188,000 in 24-25 and $165,800 in 25-26. So based on all that, the sanitary sewer area service budget is balanced with support from operating reserves in 23-24. We also have a table of summary of our reserves, both operating, capital, and depreciation. Going into the start of this fiscal year, I think you have the report. I don't need to go through it number by number, but if you have any questions about those reserves, Director Matthews can certainly answer them. But for the most part, this year we're lowering the operating reserve by $98,700 to balance the budget, transferring $50,000 from capital reserves to help fund this year's capital works, and $95,000 from transfer to depreciation account. So I don't know if there's any questions before the recommendation, but we can
Go ahead with the
take those now.
recommendation.
Okay. We recommend to council that it approve the balanced sanitary sewer area service operating budget as presented for the 23-24 fiscal year. And further, as the current sewer rates are no longer sustainable and our reserves are depleting, we recommend that a rate study be completed for the town's sanitary sewer area service, so revenues from sewer charges are able to fund the steadily increasing expenditures.
Excellent, thank you very much, Director Bell. So a motion from that is that CAC recommend to the September 25th, 2023 council meeting approval of the sanitary sewer area service operating budget in the amount of $1,490,900 and further conduct a rate study. Someone could move that, please. Councillor Huntley, thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Maxwell, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that CAC recommend to the September 25th, 2023 council meeting approval of the sanitary sewer area service operating budget in the amount of $1,490,900 and further conduct a rate study. Is there any discussion on this matter or questions to the director? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship, through the chair. And maybe I just didn't see it, but what does that leave the reserve at?
On page 3 of the report, and maybe Wanda can speak to that.
Sorry, I think I missed it.
So if you look on page 3 of the operating summary budget, it does show a chart. So there are 3 reserves. There's an operating reserve, there's a capital, and a depreciation reserve.
Yes, I see.
So the operating reserve is still in a healthy position, but with if you looked at the budget for the upcoming 2 years, with a rate increase, where we would anticipate needing about 400. We would be able to replenish the reserve by 400,000.
Okay.
So without that, we would really be tapping out all of our reserves within 2 years.
Okay.
The capital budget, as you can see, is a reduction of 50,000, leaving 84. And the depreciation reserve, the 95,000 for this year will leave 75. And when we look at the capital budget, you'll see we'll need the 75 there at the end of this year, plus the 75 in the budget to cover what would be there for next year, and then that would be depleted. So,
can I ask one?
Does that help?
Yes, it does,
Answer
very much,
question?
thank you. And the study that's done, normally that would take roughly how long?
A lot of the preliminary work has already been done,
Okay.
so that doesn't go to the Utility and Review Board like the Water Commission
Right.
Rate study does to a hearing. So this is something that we would just bring to council when
Okay.
we have the final numbers and
Oh,
recommendation.
okay.
So I'd like to see that come to council, by the end of the calendar year, or no later, and then probably recommend to go into effect in the new fiscal.
Great, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Is there any further discussion on this matter? Are you ready for the question? The question is that CAC recommend to the September 25th, 2023 council meeting approval of the sanitary sewer area service operating budget in the amount of $1,490,900 for the year of 2023-2024 and further conduct a rate study. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed, and the motion is carried. Thank you very much. All right, Director.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Moving into the sanitary sewer area service capital budget for 23-24. The area service is seeking capital funding for 3 main projects in 23-24, so it's 22-23, 23-24, in the amount of $400,000. The 3 projects include Phase 2 of the already awarded McDonald Avenue subdivision. That's just a 2-phase project. McDonald, Henry, and Brayside. That cost is known. We've already done or doing the work now. That's $260,000. Upgrades to Mill Run Lift Station. That station is now over 30 years old and requires new upgrades, new panel and new pumps and other equipment. That's budgeted at $110,000. And every year we add, as lots are sold in the Kentville Business Park, we service those lots as they're built on, and we budget $30,000 this year to complete the additional sanitary sewer laterals to lots in the park. So infrastructure is failing in both of these. I don't know why I have that there. That doesn't need to be brought up. Funding sources for the capital, 50,000, as I mentioned before, will come from sanitary sewer reserves, 170,000 from our depreciation reserve, and 180,000 from long-term borrowing. That totals the budgeted amount of $400,000. Future years are ratified in principle, and we have a recommendation. We recommend to council that it approve the sanitary sewer area service capital budget in the amount of $400,000, along with its funding sources for the year 23-24.
Thank you very much, Director, for that recommendation. So the motion would be that CAC recommend to the September 25th, 2023 council meeting approval of the sanitary sewer area service capital budget in the amount of $400,000, including its funding sources for the year of 23-24. Someone could move that, please. Deputy Mayor, thank you. The second, Councillor Huntley, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that CAC recommend to the September 25th, 2023 council meeting approval of the sanitary sewer area service capital budget in the amount of $400,000, including its funding sources for the year 2023-2024. Is there any discussion on this matter? Or questions to the director? Are you ready for the question? The question is that CAC recommend the September 25th, 2023 council meeting approval of the sanitary sewer area service capital budget in the amount of $400,000, including its funding sources for the year 2023-2024. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed, and that motion is carried. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Director, and the floor to Director Matthews with regards to the TDR.
Sure. So as Director Bell indicated, our capital budget includes $180,000 for debt. So we are recommending that the Council Advisory Committee approve obtaining temporary borrowing for the amount of $180,000 for the McDonald Henry Braeside Phase 2. Be put forward to the next council meeting.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that recommendation, Director. And the motion is that CAC recommend to the September 25th, 2023 council meeting approval of a temporary borrowing resolution in the amount of $180,000 in support of the McDonald Henry Braeside Phase 3. If someone could move that, please. Deputy Mayor, thank you. In a second, Councillor Huntley, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that CAC recommend to the September 25th, 2023 council meeting approval of the temporary borrowing resolution in the amount of $180,000 in support of the McDonald Henry Braeside Phase 2. Is there any discussion on this matter? There being no discussion, are you ready for the question? The question is that CAC recommend to the September 25th, 2023 council meeting approval of a temporary borrowing resolution in the amount of $180,000 in support of the McDonald Henry Braeside Phase 2. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed. And the motion is carried. Thank you very much. So we are now at the public comments portion of our meeting. Members of the public are invited to speak to council on any agenda item. You will be provided with 3 minutes to speak, and disrespectful or comments on personnel are not permitted. And please provide your name and address prior to speaking.
Hi, everyone. Okay, my name is Janet Specht. I live at 23 Condon Avenue. And I have a message tonight for everybody, but first I want to provide some context. So I've lived at this address 27 years, and it's not in a flood zone. But during the past 8 years, I've been dealing with floods, which are progressively getting worse. The first one that I acted on was in 2015. It was just a minor flood, but it was significant enough that I thought, I've got to pay attention to this. So I wrote a letter to the town. I had everybody on the street sign it. I was told by the town that they would put a retention pond in the Donald Hills collector to slow the water flow. Nothing happened. Move forward, 2019, 3 floods. A year later, the town installed wonderful infrastructure to replace the collapsed storm sewer that wasn't working at all. And I had so many people verbally tell me, guaranteed this is gonna work, you're never gonna have another flood. I wanted to believe them. Okay, that was 2019. Okay, August 30th, what, 12 days ago? The new infrastructure, I don't want to say failed. It failed from keeping away a flood. It would have been fine if it had just been water, but it's not water. It is, when we say debris, it's not leaves. It's rock, it's mud, and I mean rocks, and tree limbs taller than me. Mud, everything, it just clogs it. So as Dave Bell said, town, they do come up quite often and they clear it out. But that morning, Dave, they were not there. Well, they were not there the day, okay, they were not there the day of the flood, and I didn't see them the day before, I'm sorry. I work from home and I see what's going on. So that was a terrible flood. It's getting worse and worse and worse. It's a river. And there was some mention about if the water's higher than the curb, that it's the homeowner's responsibility. No, the curb should stop the water. The water is up to my knees. It's like 1.5 feet high, and it's a river. So that's my context. Well, actually, one other thing on the context. Since the flood of the 30th, I have asked the CAO, and I've left a message with Dave. I've asked for barriers, and I've asked for sandbags. This is hurricane season. I was told no to both. My neighbor went to down on West Main, and she picked up empty sandbags for me. I've called the fire department, and they are going to fill them for me tomorrow. I've purchased barriers on my dime. Hopefully they'll be installed this week. There's a storm coming. And I just want to say I really appreciate the questions that some of the councillors put forward tonight to Dave Bell and to CAO Troke, so thank you for that. Now the message I want to say, I prepared this message before I knew you were going to say those comments. Okay, to start the message, I want to quote Greta Thunberg, the climate change activist who addressed the UN in 2021 at the age of 13. This is all wrong. I should not be here. But here I am again, in front of the town of Kentville elected officials and staff. Elected by the tax-paying citizens. We elect you because we, the citizens, think you will represent our needs, our wishes, and always do the right thing for us, your people, to protect us. You have failed me. For 8 years, I have lived through floods, cleanups, home repairs, home flood mitigation installation, with little to no support from the town. My expenses are approaching 6 figures. You have failed to act with appropriate action. You tried in 2020, but that infrastructure is insufficient. Why? To protect the town coffers? That's more important than protecting your citizens? To appear not responsible? How dare you not protect your citizens? Me. People need you to do more. We need to be safe. I am not safe living at 23 Conant Avenue, my home.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, were there any questions?
No. All right, council has,
One more?
oh, go ahead.
And one more. Okay, my name is Ray Lakoti. I live on Deer Haven Drive. This is regards to the green space. I've lived there since 2010, and I've seen all the development that's been going on. But just recently, there's been some landowners that seem to be making the green space my space. They're encroaching onto this property, and they have no qualms about it. There's one landowner that has actually installed illegal ditch drains into the natural ditch that flows through this space, and he's actually filled in the ditch. So I've been in correspondence with Craig McGill, and he's not responding back to me. I've sent him pictures. I believe I sent pictures to everybody here. I'm not sure if you've got my PowerPoint presentation, but you can see some of these some of these drains that are going into the natural ditch here. One picture shows, I don't know if you have this one here, shows where before the road was paved, there used to be a trail that was right next to the lamp post and the post office boxes. And Will Goodwin, he'd always keep this trail clear for all the people in Deer Haven so they could walk through the green space to the mailboxes. That trail has now been taken over by this landowner. And what I'm asking the town council is who is enforcing the boundaries of this green space? Because everybody's just making it theirs. They're mowing into it. They're actually pushing their lawns into it. And what I propose to the council is that a low-level fence be installed around the perimeter of the green space, which will clearly define which is green space and which is private property. And anybody that infringes on that should be fined by a bylaw officer, and that's how it should be. I did send everybody some pictures, and I hope the council can do something about this to keep the green space, not other people's extensions of their back lawns. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Frank Tuhig. I live on Canaan Avenue, corner of Canaan and Elm in Kentville. Last winter, we had subsidence of part of the sidewalk on Canaan Avenue. The street was closed. I've been looking to see whether there's anything in the process with regard to tenders to repair the subsidence, and there has been nothing. I'm just wondering, Dave mentioned that there was going to be work in progress. I'm just wondering when the tender was called and who was awarded the tender. It's been some time, and I think that if that happened in your area, that you had your road closed for this length of time, the repairs would have been done, but they're not done. It's been a long time since we've been able to use Canaan Avenue, and I think that you should put it on the front burner, and you should inform us if there was a tender and how much that tender was for, and who got the award of the tender. Could any of you answer that question for me, please? And the other thing is, this lady was here talking about having problems with her property regarding keeping water off her property. And we're spending a lot of money on the sidewalks downtown, and there is a remediation for that problem that she has there, but the town hasn't addressed it. And I think that they should be addressing those issues before we start replacing sidewalks that I feel just need repairs rather than replacement.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Houston from 20 Deer Haven Drive. Just to follow up with Ray, thank you for approving the trail mowing and some improvements up there and helping our neighbors get off the streets. We have a lot of new children up there, little tiny ones, and they're riding their bicycles, and there's some fast traffic, and I'd like to see them get off the street, so I applaud you for moving that forward for us. I look forward to working with Craig or whoever's in that position when he moves forward, and hopefully get an area up there mowed for children and some natural things. I've talked to some of the rec people to make it child friendly as well as walking friendly for some adults. Addressing, and I have forwarded messages numerous times about the mowing of certain people have literally mowed half of the green space at one entire end and mowed through a private lot to divert people to walk through the private lot as opposed to walking through the town throughway there, which goes from one cul-de-sac to the other. And I was promised that that would be addressed, and we were told nobody was to mow or trim or anything. And we've all really followed that rule, except for the person who continues to mow the entire end of the green space for their own backyard and divert people who would walk on that nice smooth area, diverted them through 2 other private lots. So that then we were told we weren't allowed to mow the trail at all. I would like to know if we could get permission, or I could get permission. I volunteered last year and I whippersnipped and mowed, and Craig lent me the equipment, and I did it free and happily to do that and trim things so that we have a lot of people with mobility issues that they could get up there. We've got a curb that's already cut out that would suffice for the trail, because where we have it, the town had kind of looked at, or rec had planned on putting it, was going to require another chunk of curb being cut out, and that's a couple of $1,000s to have that done. So, I mean, if we could just move it back to where that curb was and give permission from the town to mark out where the property markers are, and I would gladly do that if this is going to take a while so that people can still enjoy this. We can get the little kids off the street up there on their bicycles, and people who have scooters and those things that don't want to be on the street with no sidewalks up there. It's only a matter of time before our cul-de-sac, where there's very fast people driving around the corner, that one of these little kids are going to get wiped out on their little bicycles as they're staggering back and across. So it's just an easy solution. I'll do it for free. I will do the mowing. The curb's already cut. If I could just get a little, the markers are put out for the property, I would be more than happy to get out there and sweat and tears and do that and help out the people of the neighborhood. So that's all I ask, is that if there could be no delay on marking that out. If the procedure for the rest of the improvements takes time, that's great, but I would appreciate it if at least that part could go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the Council Advisory Committee has items concerning land and personnel, which must be conducted in a closed session, and we require a motion to go into the closed session to discuss the agenda items. Deputy Mayor? Councillor Huntley? It's been moved and seconded that council move into the closed session. The question's on adoption of motion. Motion to move into the closed session. All those in favor? Those opposed? The motion is carried, and the time is 9:32.